"Get out of this house," she demanded, her voice cold and unwavering. I barely had time to react before she added, "Besides, I already have a plan for a new life for him." My mother-in-law, never one to change, had concocted an outrageous scheme. With a triumphant smirk, she said, "You incompetent wife, get your divorce." Something snapped inside me. "You'll regret saying that," I retorted. "Regret? Why should I?" She laughed dismissively. "Ha ha. Because this house," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "My name is Kelly, and I'm 34 years old. After graduating from college, I landed a job as an engineer at a major company. Since then, I've poured my heart into my work. It was during this period that I met Tommy, who would eventually become my husband. When I was 28, I encountered him through work. He was a salesman who frequently visited our office. Tommy was always friendly, greeting me with a warm smile even though our paths rarely crossed directly. It was at a company social event that we truly connected. The person in charge of our account had a high regard for Tommy, and after our brief introduction, extended an invitation for him to join us. That evening, Tommy and I discovered we had much in common. We exchanged contact details and soon began dating. 2 years later, we married. Our relationship has been a source of immense joy and support. Tommy has been my rock, especially when I face significant decisions like starting my own business. When I was contemplating leaving my job to freelance, I was filled with doubt. The uncertainties about steady income and potential vacations weighed heavily on me. But Tommy encouraged me, saying, "If you really want to do this, then go ahead and try. I'll support you no matter what." Despite my cautious nature, I took the plunge and resigned from my job. To my surprise, my freelance work took off beyond my expectations. My prior experience made me a trusted professional, and I began handling significant projects with a much higher income than before. Tommy and I were thrilled with the growth in our savings. While I was ecstatic about the financial success, what truly made me happy was his unwavering support. With him by my side, I felt I could tackle any challenge. These days, we enjoy traveling and driving together on his days off. We still save diligently, but also allow ourselves the occasional splurge. Our life together is fulfilling and joyful. Then, one day, while working from home, I started feeling unwell. When the discomfort persisted, I went to the hospital for a checkup. To my astonishment, I discovered I was pregnant. That evening, as I waited anxiously for Tommy to come home, I could hardly contain my excitement. When he arrived, I immediately shared the news. "I went to the hospital today," I said, a mix of nervousness and excitement in my voice. "Oh, I see," he replied, his tone unexpectedly subdued. "I'm sorry. I couldn't follow you there. How did it go?" my husband asked as he hung up his suit jacket. I chuckled softly and replied, "They told me I'm pregnant." He paused, staring at me in surprise. "What? Seriously?" "Yes," I confirmed, beaming. "I'm pregnant." A wide smile spread across his face. "Really? We did it. Thank you, Kelly." His joy was infectious, and I couldn't help but share in his excitement. We eagerly anticipated welcoming our baby together, committed to doing our best as a family. As we sat down to enjoy the dinner I had prepared, my husband continued to talk animatedly about our future child. We discussed the baby's potential gender and began dreaming about baby items. "If it's a boy," he said, "I want to teach him to play catch. And if it's a girl, I'd love to play house with her." I decided it was the right moment to share a thought that had been on my mind. "How about we build a house soon?" He looked puzzled. "What do you mean?" "Well," I explained, "we've saved up quite a bit of money. With a baby in the way, our current place might be too small. It could be a good time to invest in a new home. We could have a bigger space for the baby to play, a dedicated room for my work. Doesn't that sound dreamy?" He nodded, clearly pleased with the idea. "Yes, it does. We'll have a beautiful, spacious home for our new baby." We decided to start planning our new house immediately. On weekends, we visited open houses and worked on floor plans, aiming to complete the house before the baby arrived. About a month after learning about the pregnancy, we planned a visit to my in-laws to share the news. I felt a pang of unease. My relationship with my mother-in-law had always been strained. The drive to their house was about 30 minutes, but I seldom visited. During our early marriage, I'd made an effort to visit for Thanksgiving and New Year's. However, my mother-in-law frequently criticized my career, saying things like, "You're too focused on your job," and "When are you going to give us grandchildren?" Her comments were often harsh. "All you do is sit at your computer. don't you? I don't like you because you're kind of a nerd. Tommy's a great communicator as a salesman, but his wife is like this. Despite my efforts, she failed to understand that my interest in computers was the reason behind my job. While I didn't have poor communication skills, her words stung. She only masked her true feelings when my husband and father-in-law were around, putting on a facade of politeness. Her heartless remarks, made only in private, left me bitter and wary. Gradually, I had been avoiding my mother-in-law, visiting her less frequently. However, this time, I had no choice but to go since we were sharing the news of our baby's arrival. She had often asked if I had any children yet, so I hoped she would be pleased to hear the news. With a mix of anxiety and anticipation, my husband drove me to my in-law's house. My mother-in-law greeted me with her usual blank expression, but her demeanor shifted immediately when my husband spoke. "Mom, it's been a long time," he said warmly. Her face lit up with a smile, and her tone brightened. "Oh, Kelly, it's been ages. I hope you've been well." "Yes, I've been fine," I replied, trying to match her cheerful tone. "I'm glad to hear you're doing well too. Come on in, both of you," she invited us with a forced enthusiasm. As we entered the living room, my father-in-law welcomed us warmly, saying, "Oh, you've come a long way." I was about to sit on the sofa with my husband to chat with my father-in-law when my mother-in-law asked me to help with serving tea. I followed her to the kitchen, feeling a pang of discomfort. In the kitchen, my mother-in-law's demeanor changed completely. She looked at me coldly and said, "I haven't seen your irritating face in a while. I suppose you're still doing that lowly job of yours? I hear you plan to keep working even after the baby is born. I hope you're not going to make a foolish decision like that." Her harsh words stung, but I had to endure them. When I returned to the living room to serve tea, her attitude shifted again. In front of my husband and father-in-law, she was all smiles and acted like the perfect mother-in-law. When my husband announced my pregnancy, her reaction was a facade of joy. "I'm so happy, Kelly. Thank you. I can't wait to meet my grandchild. You're such a wonderful daughter-in-law." Her sudden change in attitude was bewildering, but I forced a smile in response. I was eager to leave after sharing the news. I just needed to navigate the conversation with polite responses and get out of there. Unexpectedly, something happened during the conversation that caught me off guard. It all began with a seemingly casual comment from my father-in-law. "Won't your current room feel a bit cramped once the baby arrives?" My husband, excited about the prospect of a new house, enthusiastically mentioned that we were considering building one. My mother-in-law, who had been quiet until then, perked up immediately. "You're building a house?" she asked, her tone oddly cheerful. I had a sinking feeling about where this was heading. Then my mother-in-law made a surprising suggestion. "Let's make it a two-family house." My husband and I were caught off guard. "What are you talking about, Mother?" he asked, his confusion evident. But my mother-in-law continued as if she hadn't noticed our reaction. "Since this house is getting old anyway, we could talking about either renovating it or selling it. If we convert it into a two-family house, we could support Kelly during her pregnancy and live with our grandchildren. Don't you think?" My father-in-law, still puzzled, responded, "Well, it would be nice to live with the grandchildren, wouldn't it?" My mother-in-law, as if she had prepared a convincing argument, added, "Exactly. It's not easy when you have a baby, especially since you plan to keep working after the baby is born, Kelly. It would be reassuring if I were around to help with the housework and childcare." Her pressure was palpable, and I could feel myself flinch. My husband, sensing my discomfort, said, "Well, it's an important decision, so we'll need to think about it. We should be heading home now that we've shared the news," he added, signaling it was time for us to leave. I was surprised by how excited my mother-in-law was about the news, but it was a relief to see her happy about the birth of our child. Despite her enthusiasm, I still felt apprehensive about living together. My past experiences with her left me doubtful. However, since then, my mother-in-law seemed to have changed her approach. She stopped the harsh comments and began regularly sending me emails to check on my health. Her texts were kind and considerate, without any of the unnecessary remarks I had grown accustomed to. I started to wonder if she had genuinely changed her attitude. After a long absence, I visited my in-laws for Thanksgiving, and their warmth was unexpected. Even when we were alone, she was kind and supportive. Newfound kindness made me reconsider my stance. When my husband asked me about the possibility of living together in the new house, I was more open to the idea. The deadline for completing the house was approaching quickly, and we needed to make a decision. I had been working closely with my mother-in-law, who had been increasingly kind. It began to feel like living in the same house might be manageable, especially with her help around the house and with childcare. I even started to think it would be beneficial to have her support. "Let's go ahead and build the two-family house," I suggested to my husband. He looked surprised. "Is that really a good idea? You've always had issues with my mom." I sensed he was carefully observing my reaction. While I still had reservations about her, I was reassured by how she had been treating me recently. "I think we could make it work now. She's been very kind, and it seems like we can get along." My husband seemed relieved. "I'm glad you feel that way. You're right, my mother can be a bit challenging, but I believe she'll help with the kids." We returned to the construction company to modify our plans for the two-family house. Since we had already settled on the floor plans, we expanded the rooms to accommodate the new arrangement. The process went smoothly, and we even visited the construction site with my in-laws. I was looking forward to the lively, new chapter with the arrival of our child. I was thrilled as we prepared to move into our new home. Construction was underway, and I was nearing the last trimester of my pregnancy. The excitement of starting this new chapter in our lives was palpable, and my in-laws seemed genuinely supportive. A few months later, I successfully gave birth to a healthy baby girl. My husband and in-laws were overjoyed. As we awaited the completion of our new house, anticipation grew. Finally, the house was ready. My husband and I brought our daughter to our new home for the first time. Coincidentally, my in-laws arrived at the same time, and together we entered the house with eager excitement. The new home was stunning, spacious, and beautifully designed. Just walking through it filled me with joy. Both my husband and father-in-law quickly settled into their new rooms, their faces beaming with contentment. Then, I was called to the kitchen by my mother-in-law. "Come here for a minute, Kelly," she said. I was surprised to find her at our house, but I went to the kitchen as requested. "What's wrong, Gemma?" I asked, puzzled. "I can finally tell you," she said coldly. "I want you to leave this house." I was taken aback, unable to grasp what was happening. My mother-in-law continued with a disdainful tone reminiscent of the past. "I didn't want to be kind to you, but I tolerated you because Tommy was building me a house. It's been tough these past 6 months, but now my efforts have paid off." "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. "I've never liked you. You kept your job even after having a child, and to top it off, it's a girl. You promised to help with the housework and childcare, but that was a lie to manipulate Tommy into doing what I wanted. Now that the house is built, you're no longer needed. Divorce Tommy." My heart sank as she added, "And I already have a new wife in mind for him." "What?" I gasped, shocked. "She's the daughter of an acquaintance of mine. She wants to be a housewife, so I plan to arrange for her to marry Tommy in his house." I was stunned into silence. My mother-in-law's cruel plans were far from what I had expected. Her face was a mask of triumph as she declared, "You incompetent wife, get a divorce and leave right now." At that moment, something inside me snapped. There would be no forgiveness for her cruelty. "You'll regret saying that," I said, my voice shaking. "Regret? Why?" she asked with a mocking tone. "Because this house," I began, but before I could finish, my husband arrived. "Hey Mom, I heard what you just said. What do you mean you're kicking Kelly out and planning to replace her?" he demanded. My mother-in-law looked momentarily startled by his interruption but quickly resumed her stance. "I'm only doing this for your own good," she said dismissively. My husband's face was a mix of anger and confusion as he stood up to his mother. The tension was palpable, and I knew that the future of our family was hanging in the balance. "I don't want this weak woman living in your house. Get a new wife who is young and can give birth to a son," my mother-in-law said with cold disdain. My husband's face turned pale as he confronted her. "What are you talking about? Kelly is the one who built this house. It's in her name." My mother-in-law's eyes widened in disbelief. "That's a lie." "No, it's not," my husband said firmly, his disgust evident. "I've explained this before. Kelly's income increased significantly when she became a freelancer. She makes enough to buy a house." "What are you talking about?" my mother-in-law asked, confused. "Kelly earns about 10 times more than I do," my husband continued, his voice rising. "She makes about $3 million a month." My mother-in-law's jaw dropped. Clearly, she had no idea about my earnings and was taken aback by the revelation. Just then, my father-in-law arrived, looking for us. I was wondering where you went and thought you might be here. What's going on? He asked, noticing the tension. My husband told my father-in-law everything my mother-in-law had said, his face reddened with anger. So you've been treating Kelly like this? You've been bullying her? That's unacceptable. My mother-in-law was visibly shaken by his reaction. Kelly, please be honest with me. Has my wife been mistreating you? I told my father-in-law everything honestly. How my mother-in-law had been difficult from the start of our marriage and only pretended to be kind during the house construction. His disappointment was clear as he glared at her. I'm already disappointed in you. I'm divorcing you. What? My mother-in-law stammered. I don't want to be with someone who can't care for the person important to her son, he declared. If I'm going to retire, I want to be with someone who genuinely cares. I will not be miserable in my old age. You're the one leaving. I'm divorcing you now. My mother-in-law was devastated and began to cry, unable to stand, but no one sided with her. My husband helped her into my father-in-law's car, and my father-in-law apologized to me before returning to their house. It turned out their house was already on the market, and he had expedited the move-out date to prepare for the worst. He served my mother-in-law with divorce papers and moved into our new duplex. At first, Dean was hesitant to live with us, but given our positive impression of him, we invited him to stay. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, left with no job and no support, moved into a cheap, shabby apartment. The marriage arrangement she had hoped for her acquaintance's daughter and my husband was also canceled. Her untrustworthiness and attempts to meddle had left her isolated, and she quickly lost all her connections. Though I'm not sure what she has done since, I imagine her life is now quite difficult. On the other hand, our family of 4 is thriving. My father-in-law and husband dote on our daughter, and happiness fills our home each day. We look forward to continuing our lives together, supporting each other and enjoying our newfound peace. Hey Judy, what's wrong? It was a cold day with Christmas carols echoing through the city. I paused to admire a tree ornament that had caught my eye. My husband, his breath visible in the chilly air, turned his head to look at me from a few steps ahead. He smiled softly, his ears flushed from the cold. I adored the way he looked at me. Nothing. Let's head home and have dinner. I've made a hot stew for this particularly cold day. Sounds great. Laughing, we held hands and strolled down the street. A familiar Christmas tune drifted into my ears. I'm Judy, I began, and what I'm about to tell you is a rather strange Christmas miracle I experienced a few years ago, and the story leading up to it. You're late. Before I could respond, I flinched at the sharp edge in my husband Dan's voice. Where have you been? I just went to the closest deli, I replied, trying to stay calm. It was mid-December, and it felt like snow was imminent. I've been chased out of the cold without my coat a short time ago. Are you trying to fool me? I'm the breadwinner of this household. When I come home, I expect dinner to be ready and served. Can't you even manage that? He glared at me displeased as he looked at the dinner. No hot sauce. How can you eat chicken wings without it? Don't mess with me. His harsh scolding made me rush out of the apartment with just my wallet and return with the hot sauce. As I gasped for breath, he grew even more irritated. Delhi, are you crazy? Isn't it cheaper to buy at a supermarket? He pointed at the hot sauce, rolling his eyes. You have no sense of budgeting. I couldn't help but retort, of course, I buy groceries at the supermarket, but it's far away. I told you earlier, it slipped my mind today. Anyway, you get upset if the food gets cold. That's why I went to the closest shop. I did forget to add it to my shopping list, but I was sure the chicken wings would taste fine even without it. I didn't understand why he was so angry. His frustration seemed unrelenting. Where's your apology? I did apologize earlier, didn't I? What's with your attitude? My retort only fueled his anger further. He continued to yell for another hour. Who wants such stale food now? In the end, he flipped the plate of chicken wings and stormed out to get dinner elsewhere. A few days later, while cleaning my parents' house, which was up for sale, I visited an old lady in the neighborhood whom I called Grandma. Listen, Grandma, I said, your prediction was off this time. I didn't predict anything, Grandma, who had cared for me since I was a child, replied with a chuckle. You're going too far. No way, everything you predicted since I was a kid came true. If they weren't predictions, then they were prophecies, I said with a wry smile. Remember when you told me not to go to the mall? There was a lightning strike that nearly burned it down. Another time, when I planned to relax at home, you advised me to go out because it would be sunny. Reluctantly, I went out and found my house had been robbed. If I had stayed home, I would have had to confront the robber. I shivered at the memory. The robber was later caught with a knife, and the thought of what might have happened if I'd been home made me cringe. Despite her dismissive attitude, Grandma listened as I spoke with seriousness. I don't think I would have been prepared for my mom's illness if he hadn't told me, especially since she was my only family. My mom always said that you gave her peace of mind. You had told her that I would be blessed with something wonderful on a Christmas not far away. It brought her comfort to know that I would have a bright future before she left me. She shared this with me from her hospital bed. It was a ray of hope for her, and seeing her contented was a testament to her love for me. So when Dan proposed to me on Christmas Day, I thought it was just as you had predicted. I met him through a mutual friend. At first, he seemed like a humble and gentle guy. But once we got married, his true colors showed. He became an arrogant husband. Like the hot sauce incident, he got upset over trivial matters. He complained that the food was too cold and the salad was lukewarm, even though he had ignored the food for a long time, playing on his phone. It wasn't just about food. He criticized nearly everything I did. How I cleaned the apartment, washed the clothes. Nothing seemed to please him. It made me feel trapped and suffocated. I didn't want to go back home to him. I went to Grandma, feeling a sting in my nose as I spoke. Now, it's almost sunset. Don't you need to go back and cook dinner? Grandma said, urging me with a glance at the sky. Feeling softly rejected, I stood up slowly. You're going to be okay as long as you stand your ground, she assured me. Even though you'll face struggles, you will find happiness one day. You'll have a Christmas that will make you jump for joy. So just live honestly and stay true to yourself. God is watching. Her words softened my heavy heart. I turned around, contemplating her reassurance. Is it a prophecy? I asked. Let's see. I'm just an old woman, she replied with another ambiguous smile, leaving me puzzled. Maybe if I put in more effort, it might change. I decided it might be too early to judge her original prediction. But as I went about preparing dinner, ironing my shirt, and dealing with Dan's hostility, things only worsened. It had been less than a year since we married, and already he took it for granted to order me around. He was constantly grumpy and overbearing, never offering a kind word. One night, he stormed in, his anger palpable. Who do you think you are? He snapped. Why did you leave me waiting outside? I have to microwave my food now. God damn it, your laziness is infuriating. I sighed in frustration. I had a co-op meeting tonight. I'd even left a note on the table for you. Shut up. That's no excuse for lazy cooking, he yelled. What do you mean you didn't cut corners? I prepared the main course and sides as usual, but to him, if it wasn't freshly cooked, it was considered cutting corners. His logic was skewed and his demands were unreasonable. You should always come before anyone and anything, he insisted. I've been telling you, you're my wife and you must obey me. His incomprehensible demands left me stunned. He stood on his dignity, proclaiming, you have no family or relatives and can't live on your own. A scum like you should just shut up and worship me. If you can't, I'll divorce you. His smirk seemed to reveal that he was merely relieving his stress by making me submit. Anyway, give me a foot massage. I tried my best to restrain myself from snapping back. I knew that would only make him angrier. Besides, I had nowhere to go in the midst of the sleet at night. So reluctantly, I sat on the floor and began the massage. My life continued in this oppressive pattern until one day, while grocery shopping, I suddenly fainted from excruciating pain and had to be rushed to the hospital by ambulance. As the doctor explained my condition, I felt my mind go blank. This virus is transmitted through sexual intercourse, he said. I had your husband tested as well. Both of you are infected. You didn't realize it because there were no symptoms. He continued, unfortunately, you'll need surgery, and I'm very sorry to say this, but the chance of conceiving in the future seems extremely unlikely. Dan quickly followed the doctor, and I was left grappling with the devastating news. I couldn't have a baby. As I repeated the doctor's words to myself, my mind was slowly overtaken by darkness. Desperate for more information, I tried to follow the doctor and Dan with my unsteady legs. Wait, doctor, Dan, I called out, but I froze when I overheard their conversation. So, everyone out there needs to get tested. Dan asked. Exactly. They must be treated all at once, otherwise, it's pointless because it keeps coming back, the doctor replied. Would they know what the test is for? Of course, Dan said persistently. I listened in despair as the conversation unfolded. It turned out Dan had been seeing at least 3 girlfriends and was still involved with one of them. I looked at a picture of my mom in the empty room, whispering to it, I needed help, you know. Even though he's not a good husband now, he might change once we have a baby. I held on to Grandma's words like a charm. I would struggle, but eventually I would find happiness. I clung to the hope that things would get better. I had been wrong. Dan seemed to care only about his own health. He was meticulous about his condition and visited the hospital regularly, but he showed no concern for me. Having lost my parents, I yearned deeply for a family of my own, a husband, children, and a home filled with love. Tears streamed down my face as I clutched a picture of my mom in my hands. Mom, I sobbed, my voice breaking as I tried to stifle my cries. Suddenly, Dan burst into the room, his anger palpable. What are you doing wasting your time? You haven't even prepared dinner, he snapped. He threw the divorce papers down onto my head as I sat there, stunned. Here are the divorce papers. This is your punishment for neglecting your duties and disobeying me. His voice was harsh and his demeanor was deranged. You're so irritatingly depressing. I'm ready to divorce you at any time. It's no problem for me, but you're the one who will be in trouble. Instead of slacking off to your duty if you don't want a divorce. I'm not slacking off, I protested, but he was already cutting me off. Oh, and there's one more punishment, he said with a smirk. I'm not giving you living expenses this month. Consider this a chance for you to reflect and change your attitude. Know your place. If you disobey me, it'll be divorce. After he finished, he left the room, looking strangely refreshed. The word divorce echoed in my mind as I stared at his signature on the papers. I took a deep breath, wiping away my tears from the picture frame. Mom, I've decided, I said quietly, resolve hardening within me. I spoke softly to the picture of my smiling mother, asking her to watch over me. Then, I kept quiet and carried on with my life. For a while, Dan continued to treat me like a servant, venting his anger on me regularly. I argued back occasionally, but mostly I endured in silence. One day, as Dan began his usual tantrum, complaining about the lukewarm salad and cold stew, I sighed inwardly and resolved to follow through with my plan. You remember the deal, right? If I don't obey, it's divorce, I said. Right, you remember that at least, he sneered. If you don't want me to leave, reflect on your stupidity. He leaned back in his chair, smirking. You're a bit weak upstairs, aren't you? What? I replied, astonished. Did you just say that? He blinked in surprise at my response. What did you just say? Repeatedly saying divorce doesn't mean you're making a valid point, I said, unimpressed. Your lack of vocabulary is quite sad. What the heck? Let's just get a divorce, I said calmly. I'm perfectly fine with it. I'll be a stranger to you, just as you wish. Are you serious? He stammered, his mouth agape. I smiled and delivered my farewell, watching as his anger faded into confusion. I had already moved all my belongings out. If there's anything you don't need, just throw it away. Goodbye. I removed the apron I had bought when we got married, folding it neatly and placing it on the counter with the house keys on top. I gave him one last look and walked out of the house with my suitcase. What the heck is going on? His voice trailed after me, snapping him out of his daze. I ignored him, a sense of freedom washing over me. Yay, I'm free, I thought, heading towards my parents' house where I planned to live again. A year had passed since the divorce was finalized, yet Dan continued to contact me. His messages were relentless, pleading for apologies and offering to take me back. I had turned off notifications and ignored his non-stop texts, which were a new experience for me, given how little communication I had during our marriage. I decided to have one last face-to-face meeting with Dan at his parents' house. Why have you been ignoring me? Dan asked, trying to maintain a calm demeanor in front of his parents. I've been texting you, but you never replied. Oh, I turned off notifications from you, I said coolly. Why? Was it really that annoying? Yes, it was. Dan's face flushed with anger. So, what do you want to talk about? I responded with deliberate annoyance, watching as his frustration grew. What's with the attitude in front of my parents? What are you trying to prove? Dan's voice rose, but he quickly reined it in, glancing nervously at his parents. I'm sorry, he muttered. A rarity for him, especially during our marriage. I stifled a smile, surprised he knew how to apologize. I kept my tone steady and moved the conversation along. What exactly do you want to discuss with your ex-wife? You divorced me, remember? Dan looked puzzled, his anger momentarily replaced by confusion. Hold on, why are you acting so calm? Aren't you struggling after the divorce? How are you managing? He spoke as if he genuinely cared, yet he had never bothered to check on me, even though he knew where I was. If you want to get back together, I'm open to it, he said, his voice carrying a hint of hope. Doesn't that make you happy? Not at all, I replied, barely containing a laugh at his misplaced confidence. It doesn't make me happy, nor does it help me in any way. I'm doing well on my own. Your contribution of $500 a month wasn't enough to cover our needs. You're the one struggling without me. The expenses I used to cover are gone, and I'm much more comfortable being alone now. I shook my head, dismissing the idea. I don't see the point in getting back together after enjoying my newfound freedom. I feigned confusion as Dan's frustration became evident. What are you talking about? I was supposed to be a housewife, right? But why are we discussing finances? Dan shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsettled by the presence of his parents. Listen, Dan, stop acting like a child caught in the act. There's no need to put on a show for them. They know all about your secrets. Secrets? What are you talking about? Dan asked, his curiosity piqued. I signaled him to be quiet and prepared to reveal the truth. You're mistaken if you think I was just a housewife. Remember, I lived abroad because of my late father's work. I used the German. I learned to translate documents at home. The bookshelves were filled with materials and manuscripts, which I used to hide recording equipment. Wait, recording? Dan was stunned. His father presented the evidence, showing all the recordings of Dan's mistreatment. The videos laid bare his behavior, and Dan's parents were visibly distressed, apologizing to me and expressing their shame for raising him. Dan, caught off guard, looked like he might bolt, but his mother grabbed him and made him sit down again. She signaled to me, and I responded by pulling out the divorce papers. I pointed out the sections marked with red circles. You recognize these, don't you? No way, Dan stammered, clearly in shock. The red circles highlighted the witness signatures, names of people he knew well. Actually, there wasn't enough space for all the names. You've had more than 2 girlfriends, right? No more waiting, I continued. Before I could explain further, a resentful voice cut in. You never mentioned an STD. This means you brought it from somewhere else. Didn't you promise we'd get married? That's something only a bachelor would say. The argument escalated. You're not just a villain to us, but to all women. You're the #1 public enemy. You're finished. Surrounded by his former girlfriends, Dan crumbled to the floor as his parents looked on with exaggerated sighs. I had hired a private detective to investigate his girlfriends and had secretly contacted them. I also informed my ex-in-laws about everything. The result was chaos. Your game is up now, I declared. We're demanding compensation for the distress you caused. Dan worked for a company owned by a relative of his mother, so his payments were deducted from his salary to prevent him from escaping his obligations. Under strict supervision, he faced a long period of compensation payments. 6 years have passed since then. I was walking down the street on a cold day, Christmas songs playing everywhere, when a tree ornament caught my eye. My husband, his breath visible in the chill, looked back at me with a soft smile, his ears red from the cold. Our little girl, cheeks rosy, was nestled in his arms. I couldn't help but think about how Grandma's prediction came true. My current husband is surprisingly the brother of one of Dan's former girlfriends. After meeting him by chance and connecting over our shared experiences, he has been a source of comfort and joy. If not for what happened with Dan, I might never have met my current husband. Grandma's words about struggling but finding happiness have proven true. After we married, I found out I was pregnant, despite being told it was unlikely. I remember when I was rushed to the emergency room on Christmas Day and the doctor confirmed the pregnancy. My husband and I were overjoyed, jumping up and down, while the nurse tried to calm us down. It was a true Christmas miracle. As I snapped back to the present, my daughter clung to me in her fuzzy coat. Let's go home and have dinner. I prepared hot stew for this cold day. Sounds great. Yay, she cheered. Laughing, we held hands and walked home, the familiar Christmas song drifting in from somewhere nearby. You already had the divorce papers ready? How's that? I scared you, didn't I? Because I'm ready for this at any time. So you better cool down and reflect on what you just said." With that, my husband Lance got up and went into his room. "My name is Alice, a 28-year-old office worker. I married Lance a year ago after meeting him on a blind date. He pursued me, and after a year and a half of dating, we decided to tie the knot. In hindsight, it may have been too soon, but I had always vaguely envisioned getting married and starting a family by the time I was 30, so I accepted his proposal. But I quickly realized that I should have been more cautious about such life-changing decisions. The first red flag came when Lance abruptly announced he was changing jobs right after we got married. "I'm changing jobs," he said, completely out of the blue. "Why so suddenly?" I asked, trying to understand his reasoning. "Because I can't show my full potential there," he replied confidently. I was taken aback, wondering what he meant. He informed me that he had already submitted his resignation and would be leaving his job at the end of the month. Although he was able to secure a new position, the salary was significantly lower than what he had been earning before. At the time, I thought it would be okay since I was also working, but then came the next surprise. Lance started pressuring me to quit my job. If Lance's new salary had been sufficient to cover our living expenses, I might have considered it, but with his recent job change and reduced income, quitting my job would have left us in a precarious financial situation. Despite Lance's assurances that his salary would soon increase, there was no clear timeline for when that would happen. Without my income, we wouldn't be able to save any money, and we'd struggle to cover basic expenses like rent and car maintenance. So I told Lance, "I won't quit my job until your salary goes up." Lance seemed to agree, but he kept asking me to quit, bringing it up repeatedly. Each time, I gave him the same response. A year into our marriage, his salary still hadn't increased, yet he continued to ask, "When are you going to quit?" I was tempted to sarcastically say, "Now," but I couldn't, not yet. If he wanted me to quit so badly, he needed to focus on earning more. Instead, he should concentrate on his work rather than persistently pressuring me. I began to wonder why Lance was so eager for me to quit my job, and eventually, I realized it. Lance wanted me to take care of his mother, Sarah. Whenever we visited my in-laws, Lance would say, "I just want to make things easier for you, Mom," and Sarah would respond, "Thank you, Lance. That's very kind of you." Lance would then glance at me, silently pressuring me to quit my job. He claimed his mother needed care, but the truth was Sarah wasn't ill at all. She was healthy, active, and financially independent, earning enough from her part-time job to enjoy her hobbies and social life. She didn't need my help at all. If I were Sarah, I'd be insulted by the notion that I needed to be taken care of when I was perfectly capable of taking care of myself. But Lance still insists that I should take care of his mother, Sarah. "Oh, if only one of us were home during the day, we could check on Mom every day," Lance blurts out, clearly expecting me to be that person. It's tiresome to keep hearing this, but I finally ask, "Sarah is in perfect health. What exactly do you want me to do?" "There's plenty you could do," Lance responds, almost as if it's obvious. "You could help with the housework, run errands for her. There's always something that needs doing." But Sarah has a part-time job and spends a lot of time socializing with her friends. She's not even home most of the day, I point out. "Even if Mom's not home, you could still do the housework, couldn't you?" he counters. What? Is he serious? "So, you want me to be her housekeeper?" It's becoming increasingly clear that Lance just wants to look good in front of his parents, to appear like the dutiful son. If he cares so much about taking care of them, he should be the one doing the housework. I have no patience for Lance's superficial pride. Naturally, I didn't quit my job, and I certainly didn't start visiting my in-laws daily. I only went over during holidays like New Year's. Thinking back, Lance has always been like this when we visit his parents. He would order me around, telling me to clean up, help Mom, or see if there's anything we need from the store. But I never took the initiative to do these things. When I pushed back, saying, "Don't you know this area better than I do? You should go to the store," he would always reply, "It doesn't count if I do it." What does that even mean? I'm starting to realize that it's not about caring for his parents at all. Lance just wants to boss me around to make himself feel good by appearing like the ideal son. Is he really more concerned with looking good than with actually caring about me? That's how I'm beginning to see him. When I boldly asked him, "Why don't you try helping out or quit your job to take care of your own mother?" Lance looked visibly uncomfortable, his face twisting in disgust. "That's not something I'm supposed to do," he retorted. I'm giving you these instructions so that my mom will see you as a considerate and useful wife. You should appreciate how kind I am to you. So, in other words, he wants to dump all the inconvenient responsibilities on me while pretending he's doing something extraordinary. Well, I'm not your servant, your slave, or anything else. I certainly don't deserve to be belittled or treated like this in front of my in-laws. If Lance keeps making these unreasonable demands, I won't stay silent. I'll push back. But Lance remained the same, never changing his stance. He kept asking, "When are you going to quit your job?" And every time we visited his parents, he would order me around just like before. I had reached the end of my patience, so I decided it was time to have a serious conversation with my husband. "What do you mean, talk?" he asked, clearly annoyed. "I think we need to talk about our future," I replied. "Huh? What are you even trying to say?" he scoffed. "I'm honestly fed up, Lance. I'm fed up with you constantly asking me when I'm going to quit my job and pressuring me to take care of your mother." "Why are you fed up with that? You're my wife, and it's your duty to take care of your husband's parents," he shot back as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Don't you think that's a huge burden on me? Isn't it your responsibility as her biological child to help with the housework and care for your own parents?" I asked, trying to make him see reason. "No way," Lance snapped. "It's the wife's duty to do that. Are you really the kind of person who doesn't care about her family? I'm disappointed you'd even say such a thing." "Then let me ask you this," I countered. "How have you been taking care of my parents? If I asked you to take care of them, would you do it?" Lance looked at me blankly. "What are you saying? Why should a husband take care of his wife's parents?" "So that means you haven't been and won't take care of my parents?" I asked, feeling my frustration growing. "The husband's parents and the wife's parents are completely different," he replied, as if that explained everything. "What difference does it make? I don't understand," I said, exasperated. "I can't believe you're this clueless," Lance sneered. "It's like I'm talking to my old boss or something." "What are you trying to say?" I pressed. "I'm saying the husband's parents should always come first. The wife's parents should be your responsibility," he declared, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "What they?" So, in Lance's mind, the only family that matters is the one he's biologically related to. "I'm so disgusted by you," I snapped. "I'm not going to your parents' house anymore." "Huh? Why would you do that?" Lance asked, clearly taken aback. "Enough is enough. I'm tired of this," I retorted, my frustration boiling over. "No way. How dare you talk back like that?" Lance shot back, his voice rising. "My mom was right." "What do you mean, your mom was right?" I asked, my stomach sinking. "She said you're a badly behaved wife," Lance sneered. "That's why she gave me this." With that, he pulled a piece of paper out of his bag. It was divorce papers. "What? You already had the divorce papers ready?" I asked, shocked. Lance looked disturbingly proud of himself. "How's that? I scared you, didn't I? I'm ready for this at any time," he said smugly. "So you better cool down and reflect on what you just said." With that, Lance got up and went into his room, leaving me standing there in disbelief. No way. Why is Lance so selfish? And that triumphant look on his face, it's as if he thinks these divorce papers are some kind of weapon to make me submit to his will. The fact that Sarah had prepared the divorce papers made everything even clearer. Lance is nothing more than a mama's boy, eager to do whatever Sarah says while trying to boss me around. You've got to be kidding me. There's no way I'm letting Lance control me like this. Does he not realize that by pulling a stunt like this, he's already ended our marriage? His complete lack of common sense only makes me more determined. Lance had already filled out the divorce papers and handed them to me with the witness section signed by Sarah and his friends. It was obvious he was just waiting for me to fall in line. But instead, the next day, after Lance left for work, I filled out the rest of the divorce papers and submitted them to the city office. Just to be safe, I'd also filed a notice of non-acceptance of the marriage certificate, ensuring that there would be no way to reverse this decision. I called my parents to explain the situation because I knew Lance, who had given me the divorce papers as a threat, might try to file the marriage certificate on his own if he found out I had already submitted the divorce papers. My parents were shocked that I had gone through with the divorce so quickly, but were even more outraged by Lance's behavior. They immediately offered to help me move my belongings. I took a paid leave and had my parents come over while Lance was at work. Together, we moved everything out to my parents' house. I decided to stay with them for a while, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of comfort and peace. Looking back, Lance never did any housework. I was the one cooking dinner after a full day at work, cleaning, and doing laundry on my days off. On top of all that, he expected me to take care of his parents, which was simply unreasonable. That night, my phone rang. It was Lance, who must have just returned home. Hello? Hey, where are you right now? Lance demanded. I'm at my parents' house, I replied calmly. What? Why the hell would you go back to your parents' house without my permission? And where's all your stuff? Don't tell me you're staying there overnight. He sounded panicked. I almost laughed. How could he not realize I had taken most of my belongings with me? The fact that he thought I was just staying overnight spoke volumes about his selfishness. I moved out, I stated firmly. I'm not coming back. Huh? What the hell are you talking about? Come back here and make me some food, Lance demanded, his voice rising in frustration. You can prepare it yourself, I said, and without waiting for a response, I hung up the phone. I knew I couldn't have a rational conversation with Lance about the divorce if he was going to be like this, so I decided to block his number and wait for him to come to me. A week later, Lance finally lost his patience and showed up at my parents' house. But he didn't come alone. He brought his parents with him. All three of them looked grim as they entered the living room. We sat facing each other, 3 against 3. How could you do this? Lance started, his voice laced with indignation. I can't believe you would leave for such a long time without my permission. That's because you were treating me like your personal housekeeper, I replied calmly. All I asked was for you to take care of my family. Lance shot back as his parents, especially Sarah, glared at me. Don't twist things to suit your convenience, I countered. You've been forcing me to handle everything you don't want to deal with. I've told you over and over, that's not what I meant. Lance insisted, but his words rang hollow. Sarah jumped in, her voice sharp. What kind of wife are you? Lance has done so much for you. My father, who had been sitting quietly, began to tremble with anger. Sensing that he might lose his temper, I spoke up before things could escalate. Lance told me to quit my job and take care of Sarah. He said it was my duty as his wife, I explained. But when it comes to my family, he pushes all the responsibility onto me alone. In the end, Lance just wants me to obey him, take care of his parents, and let him take credit for it. He even told me that his parents were more important than mine, and that they should always be the priority. I could see the surprise on my father-in-law Robert's face. He looked at Lance, clearly taken aback. It was evident that Robert hadn't heard any of this before. And to top it off, I continued, Lance suddenly pulled out divorce papers, claiming it was Sarah's idea. What? Robert turned to Sarah, his tone questioning. Did you really suggest that to Lance? Sarah hesitated, flustered. Well, it's just that Alice has been so difficult. And did you really say that Alice's parents aren't a priority? Robert pressed. Lance stammered. Well, it's just normal for your own parents to come first, right? Don't be ridiculous, Robert snapped. I came here because I thought you were facing unreasonable hardships, but from what I'm hearing, you're the one at fault. Don't be a coward and try to use your parents' influence to get your way. Lance shrank under his father's rebuke. Robert had said everything I had wanted to say to Lance and more. He then turned to me and my parents, offering a sincere apology. I'm sorry, Alice, he said, his voice full of regret. And to you both as well, he added, nodding to my parents. I am truly sorry for the trouble my foolish son has caused you, Robert said, his voice heavy with regret. I will give him a strict lecture. Robert, you're not at fault here, I replied gently. Please don't blame yourself, and thank you for your kind words. I took a deep breath, but there's one more thing I need to say. Lance, sensing something serious, asked, What do you mean? The divorce papers you gave me, I began. I've already filed them. We're no longer married. What? No. Lance and Sarah both turned pale, shock washing over their faces. How could you do that without my permission? Lance sputtered. You told me I could file them whenever I wanted. I reminded him, my voice steady. You even had Sarah sign the witness section for you. Lance stammered, but that was just to scare you. Robert's face darkened with anger as he turned to his son. So you used it to threaten her. I spoke up, echoing Robert's frustration. Exactly. He thought he could intimidate me. How could you be so foolish? Robert snapped, his patience finally snapping. He struck Lance on the cheek, causing Sarah to gasp in shock. "I'm sorry you had to witness that," Robert said, turning back to me, his voice filled with remorse. "You were right to divorce this idiot. I apologize on Lance's behalf for ruining your marriage." Robert then grabbed Lance by the collar and demanded, "You and Sarah better apologize too." They both muttered apologies before Robert led them out of the house. I felt a wave of relief. Robert had saved my parents from losing their temper, and later he ensured that all of Lance's property went to me in exchange for no alimony. Lance didn't dare defy his father, so I ended up with all our savings and other assets from the marriage. Though I had a higher income and was the one managing the household, Robert's intervention ensured that the division was fair, and I couldn't thank him enough. I later heard that Robert was so disgusted with Sarah's involvement that he divorced her as well. Recently, I ran into a former colleague of Lance's who told me that Lance wasn't good at his job and was constantly reprimanded by his boss. Apparently, Lance had quit out of spite and switched jobs. I hadn't known about this, and it only reinforced my belief that Lance had blamed everyone else for his own shortcomings. He wasn't making much money at his new job, so I'm grateful I left him when I did. I've since rented a cozy one-bedroom apartment and have been living comfortably on my own. Work is going well, and I even got a raise recently. I'm not interested in relationships right now. I'm focused on my career and personal growth. Looking back, it was clear that Lance was more concerned with appearances than with actually improving himself. He could only maintain his dignity at home, but not in the real world. There are so many men like him who think divorce papers can be used as a threat, believing they hold all the power. But that's a huge mistake. I hope anyone in a similar situation finds the strength to break free, just like I did. And I hope Alice finds someone wonderful in the future. Thank you for reading until the end. Please subscribe to our channel and see you in the next video. What I buy becomes my husband's property too. If that's unacceptable, then maybe we should just divorce. Charles, my husband, often tries to take things from me for reasons that seem completely unreasonable. He even attempts to give gifts I bought for my parents to his own parents, just to make himself look good. But that's not how it works. When I confronted him about it, his face turned pale. Before I married Charles, my grandparents had left me a significant gift, a piece of real estate. I thanked them, thinking this would be a future safety net for both me and my husband. But my grandparents, who were always wise and cautious, advised me to keep it a secret, even from Charles. They insisted that I keep the knowledge of my passive income and financial independence to myself. I felt the pain of guilt about hiding this from Charles, but I chose to follow my grandparents' advice. After my grandfather, who cared deeply for me, passed away, I continued my life with Charles. That's when the incident occurred. One day, while checking the account where I managed our living expenses, I noticed that $10,000 had been withdrawn. This account, which I primarily managed, was meant to cover our household costs, using the money Charles contributed. It was a huge sum, and I had no memory of withdrawing it, which meant it had to be Charles. When he came home that evening, I confronted him. "Hey, $10,000 is missing from our living expenses account. Do you know anything about that?" "Yeah, I lent it to my mom. She was in some kind of trouble," he replied casually, confirming that he had indeed given the money to his mother, Lisa. "And you didn't think to tell me?" I asked, astonished. "It's fine. Besides, it's my money that I earned. We have some savings, so it's not a big deal. That amount won't hurt us," he said, brushing it off. If Lisa was in trouble, what could I do? I had to help. But yeah, I probably should have said something. The account was for both of us, and if he had taken the money from a separate account he had before we got married, it would have been fine. But taking such a large sum from our shared account without a word, that was too much. When I cited his selfishness, Charles frowned, clearly irritated. Okay, I'll tell you next time," he muttered, dismissing the issue and quickly heading to the bathroom. I felt a knot in my stomach. He hadn't always been this way. When we first got married, he was attentive and always listened to me. Was this how marriage changed people? A few days later, I had no choice but to visit my in-laws' house to drop off a package that had been mistakenly delivered to us. "Oh, Megan, thanks for bringing this over. Why don't you come in for a bit?" Lisa said, greeting me warmly. I hadn't planned on staying, but it felt rude to refuse, so I stepped inside for a cup of tea. As I sat in the living room, I noticed some new, luxurious items, high-end cosmetics, glamorous clothes, and various health products. "Oh, my wonderful son gave them to me as a gift," Lisa said with pride. I realized then that the $10,000 in our account had been used for these extravagances. Charles had told me Lisa was in need of money, but it seemed she had used it on indulgent purchases instead. I couldn't help but feel uneasy knowing that the money had been spent on luxurious products for my mother-in-law. As I sipped my tea, unable to muster a smile, I noticed the shift in my in-laws' demeanor. Their cheerful expressions faded, replaced by a stern, almost threatening look. "My son is such a wonderful boy, always thinking of me and getting me these lovely gifts. But what about you?" my mother-in-law asked pointedly. "Yes, as his wife, are you treating my son the way he deserves?" my father-in-law added, his tone laced with suspicion. There was something unsettling in their voices. "We heard that you give him a hard time about the money he spends on me," my mother-in-law continued. "That doesn't seem right, does it?" It became clear to me then. Charles had painted himself as the victim to his parents, making it seem like I was the unreasonable one for questioning his decision. Their fearful, accusing gazes now made perfect sense. I felt a deep weariness settle over me. I had never imagined being treated so poorly by both my husband and his parents. The constant neglect and lack of respect were taking their toll, and for the first time, I began to seriously consider divorce. I thought that if I divorced Charles, I would return to my parents' house and use my savings from passive income to rebuild their home. The house, a two-story structure built over 30 years ago before my brother was born, had become too spacious and difficult for my parents to manage as they aged. With just the two of them living there now, even the handrails we'd installed for their convenience weren't enough to make it comfortable. A cozy, one-story house would be far more suitable for them. So I immediately called my parents to discuss my plans. Surprisingly, they weren't shocked at all about the potential divorce. Instead, they were thrilled about the idea of rebuilding their home. "We're so happy you're thinking of this," my mother said, her voice bright over the phone. "Even if we won't be living there for long, it's wonderful knowing it's being done with your income, and you can take over the house afterward." "Thank you," my father added. "But remember, take it easy and don't overdo it." Their encouraging words lifted my spirits, and I set about planning the rebuild. I was waiting to hear back from the construction company when Charles suddenly confronted me. "How dare you use our savings to build a house without telling me anything about it?" he shouted as soon as we sat down in the living room. He banged his fists on the table, his face contorted in anger, completely disregarding my feelings. "My parents will live in the new house," I replied, trying to stay calm. "No, that's not happening. It was built with our joint property, so my parents have just as much right to live there," he insisted, his voice growing louder. "Are you seriously planning to cram 4 people into that little one-story house?" "Shut up and just give me the house," Charles screamed, slamming his fists on the table again. I realized that if he knew about my passive income, his rage would only intensify. But at that moment, I decided it was time to tell him the whole truth. "To tell you the truth," I said, steadying my voice, "I have passive income. I've actually been saving money from the real estate my grandparents gifted me," I explained. "The house is being paid for with that passive income, so I didn't take a penny from our joint funds." Guilt tugged at me for breaking my promise to keep this secret. But Charles's reaction confirmed my grandparents' wisdom. His shoulders tensed, and he began pounding the table even harder. "What kind of wife hides the fact that she has her own income?" he yelled, his face turning red with anger. "You play around with my money while protecting your own, keeping it a secret from me." Watching him lose control, I realized why my grandparents had warned me to keep this hidden. Maybe they had already seen through Charles, knowing what kind of man he truly was. "I'll take the house as alimony," he snarled. "The house you built as my wife is mine too. I'm the head of this family, and if you disobey me, I'll divorce you." His words filled me with nothing but dismay. How had I lived with this man for so long without realizing his true nature? Initially, I had planned to use my passive income as a safety net, something to rely on if we ever faced financial hardship due to illness or job loss. I intended to reveal it when the time was right to help sustain our life together. But now, any desire to share that money with him had vanished. "Be my guest," I said coldly as I rose from my seat and walked out of the house, leaving Charles and his demands behind. I couldn't stand being near Charles, but decided to stay at a business hotel for the night to cool off. I planned to return home the next day with a clearer mind. However, when I walked in the following morning, Charles was waiting for me, a smug, unpleasant grin plastered across his face. As I entered, he approached me, holding a sheet of paper behind his back. With a smirk, he revealed it. It was divorce papers, already filled out. "You're lying about that passive income, aren't you?" he accused. "You made it up to cover the fact that you were actually taking money from our joint account." His accusations were as baseless as ever, and I found it impossible to reason with him. I had been honest with him from the start, and now I saw no point in trying to convince him further. "I'm telling the truth. I do have passive income," I reiterated. "Here you go again," Charles sneered. "I know you can't live without me." He shoved the divorce papers into my hand, still smirking. "Let me know when we can move in," he said with a dismissive wave, as if it were all a game. "I'm going out for a drink." He patted me on the shoulder and walked out, humming cheerfully, completely oblivious to the turmoil he'd caused. In that moment, I saw Charles for who he truly was. He hadn't changed. He had simply hidden his true nature from me all this time. From the beginning, he had looked down on me, never once truly considering my feelings. Without hesitation, I packed my belongings, filled out the divorce papers right then and there, and left the house for good. I decided to move in with my parents temporarily, explaining everything to them. We agreed to stay together until the new house was completed. The next day, I knew my life was finally moving in the right direction. I felt a wave of dismay as I looked at my phone and saw that my call log was filled with missed calls from Charles. Then, as if on cue, my phone rang again. It was him. Reluctantly, I answered, hoping this would be our final conversation. "Hello." "Hey," he said, his voice laced with impatience. "All your stuff is gone, you know." His tone left me puzzled. He was the one who had initiated the divorce, so why was he suddenly panicking when I simply left? "Yes, we're getting a divorce, so that's normal," I replied calmly. "I won't be coming back, so feel free to use the empty space however you like." There was a brief silence on his end, as if my words were finally sinking in. It seemed he was beginning to grasp the reality of my situation and the fact that I truly had passive income. After a long pause, he spoke again, but this time in a tone so sweet and pleading that it caught me off guard. Hey, he began hesitantly. "Could you let my parents live in the new house? I don't care if I have to live with your parents too, please?" I was stunned. "I've already told you it's a small, one-story house," I reminded him. "Please," he persisted. "I said I'd surprise my parents with a house." His words left me speechless. How could he even think of giving away a house he didn't own, and to present it as a surprise? It was beyond reckless and utterly absurd. "You don't really care about the savings, do you?" he added, his voice almost pleading. "You have no idea how much I was worrying about the money." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Charles was still trying to manipulate me, thinking only of himself and his parents without any regard for the truth or the consequences of his actions. "I gave you an allowance, saved for our living expenses, and tried my best to make ends meet," I began, my voice steady. "But that has nothing to do with what's happening here. You're careless with money and you leave all the hard work to others while pretending to have everything under control. You plan to present the house to your parents as if you prepared it all by yourself, didn't you? When in reality, I did all of this for my parents." Charles suddenly fell silent, and my frustration only deepened. It was infuriating how he tried to take credit for something he had no part in, using my hard work and intentions to impress his own parents. He was trying to take advantage of my genuine feelings and seize what wasn't his. "I won't give you the house I built with all my heart and soul for my parents just so you can show off to yours," I declared, rejecting his plan once and for all. He began to rant even louder. "But husbands and wives are supposed to help each other," he protested. "I'll tell them you built it, please. We're not a married couple anymore, are we?" I replied firmly. "We're strangers now. I already filed for divorce." The shock in his voice was evident. "You? Already filed it? Why are you so surprised? You're the one who asked for the divorce." "I didn't think you would actually leave me," he stammered. "Hey, let's start over. Let's talk it out and try to be a good couple this time." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was the man who had spent our savings on his own mother, threatened me with divorce, and belittled me until the very end. There was no way I would ever consider getting back together with someone like him. "No, thank you," I said, my decision unwavering. "Please give my regards to your parents." And with that, I hung up the phone, feeling a sense of finality and relief. I ended the call with a bright, resolute click. The following day, my phone was flooded with voicemails and messages from Charles, pleading for reconciliation. He claimed we could still start over, that he loved me, but I was certain his true motive was to access my property and fortune. To sever all ties, I promptly blocked all his contact information, including that of his parents. In the meantime, the house was completed, and my parents and I settled into our new, comfortable home. Life felt rejuvenated. Later, I ran into a mutual friend who knew Charles and shared the news of our divorce. She offered her sympathy and filled me in on recent developments concerning my ex. Charles had abruptly resigned from his job, claiming he no longer needed to work hard because he had acquired real estate. The company was unable to reach him, but he attempted to retract his resignation the next day. His bosses were furious, lecturing him about the trouble his sudden disappearance and incomplete notice had caused. They were particularly incensed that he hadn't considered the impact on his colleagues. Charles tried to fabricate an explanation for his actions, but it quickly became apparent that his divorce and reliance on my income were the real reasons behind his behavior. His lies unraveled, and the company refused to rehire him. It was ironic that Charles, who had once dismissed my passive income as a lie, was now trying to exploit it while parading his ill-gotten gifts to his parents. He never thought about me or our future. Reflecting on this, I felt nothing but relief. I heard that Charles had moved back in with his parents, but they were reportedly harsh with him. He struggled to find a new job due to the circumstances of his departure from his last one. It seemed he was finally facing the consequences of his actions. As for me, I'm thriving. Living in the house I built for my parents, pursuing the job I've always wanted, and enjoying life. My passive income now supports those who genuinely care for me. I feel at peace and content with how things have turned out. Okay, what's going on at this hour? Where are you right now? You want to know where I am? I'm on a spa vacation. With Luna? Oh, I see. I found everything out when my husband lied to me. My name is Kate. I'm a 30-year-old office worker. I've been married to my husband Daniel for 6 years, and we have a 6-year-old daughter named Luna. We got married during my pregnancy, and Luna is growing up to be a wonderful girl. Mom, I'll help you. Really? Can you roll the hamburger patties like this? Yes, I'll do it. There you go. Oh, Luna, you're so good at this. Here's one for Dad and one for Mom. That's a big one for Daddy. Daddy's had a tough day at work, so he deserves the big one. He might even cry with happiness. As I enjoyed cooking with my daughter, my husband emerged from the bath. Luna ran to him and said, "I made your hamburger, Daddy." He was thrilled and responded, "Really? I can't wait to eat it." We were living as a happy family, or so I thought. Both my husband and I worked, but he had a shorter commute and fewer overtime hours, so I often asked him to pick up Luna from kindergarten. Lately, though, he'd been coming home later due to work commitments, and I had to pick her up and bring her home. Mom, does Daddy not like me anymore? My heart ached as Luna asked this on our way home from kindergarten. She missed him because he usually picked her up, and now he came home so late, sometimes missing her entirely. I comforted her, even though my own heart was breaking. Daddy is working very hard for us right now. Once things settle down, he'll have more time to spend with you. Really? Yes, really. So let's support him together, okay? I'll cook for him. Luna smiled, a truly good girl, and said, "I can't wait until we can eat together as a family again." But as months passed, Daniel's work schedule remained erratic. He'd come home at 2-3 a.m. or sometimes even take the first train home in the morning. I started to wonder, are you sure it's work? If you're just out drinking, I wish you'd come home to spend time with Luna. I couldn't take it any longer and decided to confront my husband. Luna has been left alone by her father for a month, and she looks so sad, I said, trying to express my frustration. But instead of understanding, my husband grew defensive. What's with that tone? I attend company drinking parties for the sake of our family. It's unfair of you to accuse me like that. Whoa, okay, I'm sorry, I replied, feeling a pang of guilt. But you have to understand, Luna is feeling lonely because she hardly gets to play with her dad. My words seemed to hit a nerve. He fell silent and retreated to the bedroom, leaving an awkward silence between us. Soon after, I received notice from work that I needed to go on a short business trip. There were several things I needed to check in person, and it looked like I'd be away for at least one night, possibly two. My first concern was what to do with Luna. My parents live far away, so it would be challenging for them to come and help. I would have to rely on my husband, but given how busy he'd been lately, I wasn't sure if I could trust him with her. Still, I had no choice but to ask him. I waited up for him to come home, wondering if he had been drinking as usual. By the time he arrived, it was well past midnight, around 3 o'clock, to be exact. The sound of the door unlocking signaled his return. "Welcome home," I greeted him. "Kate, I didn't realize you were still up," he said, clearly surprised to see me waiting. "I stayed up because I wanted to talk to you." "Talk?" He looked taken aback, and I noticed he was visibly drunk, his face flushed. As he took in the situation, he suddenly looked pale. He sat down at the dining table, his gaze fixed on me. "So, what did you want to talk about?" "It's not a big deal," I said, trying to keep my tone calm despite his agitation. "I just wanted to let you know that I have a business trip coming up. It's short notice, but I need to go in 2 weeks on Friday. I would need to stay at least one night, and if there was a lot of work, I might have to extend it to 2 nights. Can you take care of Luna while I'm away?" I asked apologetically. "I know you're busy with work." My husband looked relieved. "Oh, that's totally fine." "Really? Are you okay with that?" he asked, genuinely concerned. "Of course," I replied. "I'm busy, but I should prioritize you and Luna. Actually, how about I take a day off and take Luna on an overnight hot spring trip?" he suggested. "I haven't had much time to spend with her lately. I'm sure she'd love that." I was relieved to hear him say that. It reassured me that he cared about our family. Until recently, I had been worried about whether he truly valued us, but it seemed my concerns were misplaced. The next morning, as I was taking Luna to kindergarten, I told her the news. "What?" she asked, eyes wide with excitement. "Daddy and I are going on a hot spring trip together," I said. Luna's face lit up with happiness, and seeing her so excited made me happy too. Then came the day of my business trip. It was my first trip since Luna was born, but it went smoother than I had anticipated. The people I met were very organized and had everything ready for me to review. I finished my work by 7 p.m. and thought to myself, if I'm done already, maybe I can go home today. I wasn't sure if I would need to stay 1 night or 2 until I assessed the status of my work. I had planned to spend the first night at a manga cafe instead of a hotel to avoid any cancellation fees. With this plan, I could catch the last train home if I managed to get a ticket. I looked forward to a relaxing evening at home if necessary. Hastily, I boarded the train and headed back. I imagined my husband and daughter enjoying a nice meal at the hotel, and the thought of my daughter's happy face eased my mind. I planned to wake up early the next morning, clean the house thoroughly, and surprise them. I arrived home around 11 p.m., wondering why the living room light was still on. I thought maybe my husband had simply forgotten to turn it off. With a critical look, I went inside and was met with a distressing sight. My daughter curled up on the sofa, crying. "Oh, Luna, what's wrong?" "Mommy," she sobbed. "Why are you crying? Where is Daddy?" My husband was nowhere to be seen, and I felt a surge of frustration. I needed to get answers from my daughter. "Daddy left in the morning without me," she explained between tears. "What? What is going on?" I thought, furious at my husband's irrational behavior. I knew I needed to calm Luna down first. I pulled her into a tight hug. "I'm so sorry, sweetie. I know it's hard being alone so late at night." As I comforted her and stroked her hair, Luna began to relax and eventually fell asleep in my arms, feeling the warmth and safety of my embrace. Luna seemed exhausted from the fear and anxiety, so I gently carried her into the bedroom. After settling her in, I went back to the living room and called my husband. "Kate, why are you calling at this hour? Where are you?" "I'm at a spa trip with Luna." "Why are you whispering?" "Luna is already tired and asleep. I don't want to wake her." "Oh, I see. I'm sure she's asleep, but she's not with you, is she?" I realized my husband had lied to me, and though I was close to losing my temper, I managed to stay calm. "How's the trip going?" "We're having so much fun. I wouldn't mind staying another night. The food is great, and the hot springs are wonderful." "Well, why don't you stay another night then?" My husband hesitated, clearly unsure. "But Kate, you'll come home after 1 night, right?" "I'll be home later than planned. I have a lot of work to do, so I'll need to stay another night. Don't worry about me. Enjoy your trip as long as you like." He didn't question my excuse. "Really? Then I'll extend the stay for 1 more night." Luna is very excited. I knew Luna needed more time with her daddy, especially since I hadn't been able to give her much attention in the past month. Make sure you call me when you know when you're coming home, my husband said. What are you talking about? She was curled up and crying by herself. I fought the urge to yell at him and ended the call, determined to ensure he faced consequences for the distress he caused Luna. I called my parents to explain the situation and quickly began packing. The next morning, I contacted a moving company. Thankfully, they could come that day, so I arranged for them to move my belongings out. Luna watched in confusion as the movers came in and began taking things away. I need to talk to you, I said gently. Luna, I've decided that we won't be living with Daddy anymore. I don't want you to be sad. I'm going to quit my job and move in with Grandma and Grandpa. That way I can spend more time with you. I added, if we move to Grandma and Grandpa's house, you won't be able to see Daddy as often. What do you want to do? I felt it was a tough question for a 6-year-old, but I wanted to understand her feelings. Will I never see Daddy again? She asked, her voice muffled. If you really want to see him, I can arrange for you to visit occasionally, but he won't be living with us anymore. Even though my daughter had done nothing wrong, I wanted her to have the chance to see her father if she wished. However, given that he had gone on vacation while leaving her alone at home, I doubted he would make much time for her after the divorce. As I considered all this, Luna seemed to come to a decision. She looked me in the eyes with resolve and said, I'm going with you, Mommy. Daddy probably doesn't care about me. I cried out, asking him why he was leaving me, but he walked away without a word. My disgust for him grew deeper. To abandon his 6-year-old daughter just to go on vacation with his mistress was unforgivable. He was a terrible man, a poor father, and a disgrace. I regretted leaving Luna with him for the business trip if it meant this would happen. I'm so sorry for making you so sad, Luna, I said as I hugged her tightly. We began preparing for the move, determined to start fresh. As for my husband, I decided to leave him to his own consequences. With that thought, I took Luna and headed to my parents' house. A few hours later, my phone rang. It was my husband. Hey, why is all your stuff gone? And Luna's stuff too. What's going on? Don't you know why? I replied. Of course not. Luna's crying because her stuff is gone too. Are you still trying to lie to me after everything? My husband seemed confused. Luna is now eating noodles that my mother made. What? He asked, bewildered. We already know you left Luna alone to go on a trip with someone else. How could you leave a 6-year-old girl at home? You're not fit to be a father. If I hadn't come back when I did, you could have traumatized Luna for life. My husband was silent, realizing I was already with Luna. He had no excuses left. It was clear he didn't care about his daughter and was willing to leave her alone just to be with another woman. I can't live with you anymore. I want a divorce, I said firmly. Divorce? Oh no, please think about it again. I can't. I don't want to see you anymore. As I spoke with my husband on the phone, the doorbell rang repeatedly. Oh God, who could it be at a time like this? I wondered aloud. My husband sounded irritated, but I knew who was at the door. It looks like they've arrived, I said, hearing my father-in-law's voice rise in anger through the phone. A moment later, I heard my father-in-law shout, "What the hell are you doing?" followed by a loud thud. It seemed that was the sound of him getting physically confrontational. My father-in-law, a longtime judo practitioner and now a university advisor, had always adored Luna. When I told him about my husband's infidelity and how he left our daughter alone, he was livid. He had vowed to make my husband pay for his actions. What the hell do you think you're doing with your own daughter? I didn't raise you to be like this. My father-in-law's angry voice echoed through the phone. Living on the first floor of our apartment had its advantages. At least there wouldn't be complaints from downstairs neighbors. But since we had already moved out, it was no longer a concern. My father-in-law's intervention ensured that the divorce process went smoothly. I was awarded full custody, and my husband paid alimony and child support in one lump sum. I even managed to secure additional alimony from his mistress. My husband's attempts to remarry his mistress failed. She was only interested in a fling and didn't want marriage. Now, he faced shame at work, had been disowned by his parents, and had lost both his mistress and his daughter. As for me, I'm finding happiness at my parents' house, spending quality time with Luna. My parents are farmers, so I help them with their work, and Luna enjoys the fresh vegetables from their farm. She seems to thrive in this natural setting, and I'm committed to putting her needs first. Leaving the young child alone while chasing after an affair was inexcusable. In retrospect, perhaps I should have involved the police to hold him accountable. But seeing him lose everything he held dear brings a sense of justice. Kate, I hope you find continued happiness with your daughter. How much did you inherit? Simon's question came out of nowhere, catching me off guard on the night of my father's funeral. I was still reeling from my grief when he asked, I heard your father had an inheritance of $3 million. So once again, how much did you get? The inquiry gave me an unsettling feeling. Distraught and desperate to avoid further tension, I lied. Nothing. I didn't inherit anything. It seems my sister and mother are the ones who received it. Simon's face lit up with a triumphant grin. I knew it. Your parents always said you were incompetent and that they didn't care about you. I'm glad my instincts were right. What? I could barely process his words. I want a divorce, he declared coldly. I can't be with someone who's poor now. I've already found someone else. I need you out of my life. With that, Simon had me sign the divorce papers. His family mocked me for my misery, but they were mistaken. They could never understand how relieved I felt to be rid of Simon's betrayal. My name is Jane. I come from a family of 4 with a younger sister named Kim. From a young age, Kim and I never got along. My mother, Anne, always sided with Kim, leaving me feeling isolated, though I eventually became accustomed to it. My father, Dan, was the only one who seemed to care, but his demanding job kept him away from home, leaving me alone with my feelings of abandonment. Even as an adult, my situation remained unchanged. I wasn't allowed to attend college due to tuition fees. Yet, when Kim was set to enroll in a private college, my mother insisted that it would be a waste not to send her despite my own lack of educational opportunities. Jane, you're not sharp or smart like Kim. It's only right that you support her education and contribute to the household. It's what any responsible older sister would do, my mother said, as if it were common sense. Her words stung deeply, and tears streamed down my face. Kim looked at me with disdain, adding, It's your own fault, you're incompetent. You're uglier and less successful than me, so you should try harder. If you can't do that, you're worthless. The toxicity of my family environment drove me to leave home once I started working. Living alone wasn't difficult for me. It felt liberating. Initially, my father sent me a small amount of money to help out, but after 6 months, that stopped. Instead, I received a letter from my mother accusing me of theft. Your father was sending you money without our permission. You have no right to it because you haven't contributed to Kim's tuition or supported us. I'll be sending you an invoice for the total amount you received. Make sure to refund it. Stop being a thief. My mother's resentment was clear, and she sent an invoice calculated to cover the exact amount of alimony, demanding repayment for the money I had received from my father. I was deeply uncomfortable discussing or debating the matter any further, so I complied with my mother's demands, sent the money, and quietly moved to a new apartment. A few years later, I married Simon, whom I met at work. Determined to sever ties with my past, I decided to inform my parents about my marriage. When I returned to their house, I was struck by how much my father had aged. The once industrious man now looked frail and bent, struggling even to stand. Oh, you're back, my mother remarked with disdain. I wonder what this ungrateful daughter, who never sends any money home, wants. When I asked about my father's condition, my mother sneered. He injured his back about a year ago and can't work anymore. Now he just stays at home and gets in my way. He's as useless as you are, Jane. Simon was taken aback by my mother's harsh words, but his attention quickly shifted when he saw my sister Kim. Wow, you're Jane's sister. You're stunning. I can hardly believe you two are related. Kim, who had grown more self-centered since starting college, now sported flashy clothes and a vibrant hair color that seemed inappropriate for her age. Despite being old enough to have graduated, she still seemed like a student, which reflected her lack of seriousness about her studies. This guy is your husband, Jane, Kim said, eyeing Simon with feigned sweetness. He's quite handsome and seems way too good for you. I almost feel sorry for him. Kim deliberately flirted with Simon, her touches and compliments clearly meant to show off. It pained me to see Simon so delighted by Kim's attention, but I resolved to stay focused on my plans. I was marrying Simon, and that was final. I'm going to cut ties with all of you, I declared. Well, if you're going to do that, could you at least wait until I've finished taking care of your father? My mother replied, barely looking up from her snacks. I need to look after him. But honestly, I don't want to. And I definitely don't want Kim to deal with it either. It's her college life, after all. It would be a shame to distract her with such a bothersome task. You should be responsible for taking care of your father, Jane. Both of you are incompetent, so you'll get along just fine. Her words infuriated me, but I knew I couldn't ignore my father's needs. From that day forward, I began visiting my parents' house frequently to care for him. As I took on this responsibility, I discovered that neither my mother nor Kim worked. Kim didn't have a part-time job, and my mother had been a stay-at-home since my father's collapse. Yet they frequently dined out and shopped extravagantly. To my shock, they had even taken my father's bankbook without his permission, spending his savings as if it were their own. My father was aware of their actions but chose to remain silent. Dad, they'll keep doing this unless we do something about it. Why didn't you tell me sooner? If I had, they would never admit they were wrong or apologize, he said. I didn't want to burden you further. Despite everything, my father had always worked tirelessly for the family and was the only one who truly cared for me. I wanted to help him in any way I could. Just as I was contemplating how to address the situation, I received a call from the hospital where my father had been admitted after his collapse. I rushed to my parents' house before heading to the hospital. My mother and sister were lounging on the couch, absorbed in the TV, showing no sign of worry when the hospital called me. Father collapsed, didn't he? I asked, exasperated. Oh, it's an exaggeration to say he collapsed, my mother replied dismissively. He just fell in the hallway and hit his head. The ambulance took him to the hospital. I'll leave the rest to you. But we need to go to the hospital. I'm worried about Father, I insisted. Shut up, she snapped. If he doesn't make it, the insurance will cover it. Why are you getting so emotional? My mother's coldness and her indifference made me sick. I left them behind and rushed to the hospital. At the hospital, I found my father lying in bed, hooked up to various tubes and barely conscious. As his condition worsened, he managed to notice me and murmured faintly, I'm sorry for being so sudden. I must be being punished. I wasn't a good father because I couldn't protect you from our family. With those final words, my father closed his eyes. I don't care about that, Dad. I love you. Please get well soon, I pleaded, holding his hand tightly, but he never responded. A week later, a lawyer contacted me regarding my father's will. He informed me that I was named as the beneficiary of an inheritance. According to the will, I was to inherit $3 million. I was stunned. It turned out that my father had hidden another bank book, separate from the one my mother had taken, which held the $3 million. He had also left a note specifying that this information should not be shared with any other family members. It seemed that this was his way of ensuring my future even after he was gone. Overwhelmed by my father's unexpected kindness, I made my way back to my parents' house to retrieve the hidden bank book. As I arrived, my mother and sister were waiting at the front door, their stances commanding and imperious. What are you doing here now? My mother demanded. Came to scavenge things now that Dan's dead? How despicable. Everything here, the house, the car, belongs to me and Kim. Don't act like a thief. I knew better than to discuss my inheritance with them, especially given their unwillingness to listen. I'm here to collect Father's memorabilia, and shouldn't I be entitled to at least a small share of the inheritance? Without missing a beat, my mother produced a document and waved it in front of me. It was another will, supposedly written by my father, but the handwriting was unmistakably Kim's, not my father's distinctive script. The will claimed that my mother and sister would inherit all of my father's estate. I can't make out much of this since Kim's handwriting is so poor, I said, struggling to understand the document. That doesn't matter, my mother replied coldly. This is the will, and it's already been shared with all our relatives and neighbors. It's too late for you to contest it now. My mother refused to let me enter the house, fully aware that I knew the will was a forgery. Defeated, I left and returned home. Simon was waiting for me, concern etched on his face. Were you at your parents' house? If you told me, I would have gone with you. It's a shame I missed seeing Kim. I was taken aback. Why are you so interested, and what does any of this have to do with you, Simon? I went to retrieve my father's inheritance, but my mother and sister kicked me out of the house. How much did you all inherit from your father? Simon asked me, curiosity piqued. I'm not sure of the total amount, but the house, land, and everything else were in his name. so it must be quite substantial, I replied. I see, Simon said, pressing further. And how much of the inheritance do you get, Jane? I hesitated, knowing I shouldn't reveal the truth. My instincts told me there was no inheritance for me. Everything was going to be divided between my mother and sister. Simon's face darkened as he suddenly retrieved the divorce papers from his room and thrust them in front of me. I knew it. I knew you wouldn't inherit anything. You're just a burden, and I've been talking to Kim a lot lately. Honestly, you're just in my way. I want a divorce now, since there's nothing in it for me if we stay together. Simon had already signed his portion of the divorce papers, so I signed them immediately. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction as I watched Simon leave with the papers, eager to file them at the city office. This was likely the last time I'd see him smile so broadly, and the same went for my mother and sister. It felt like justice was finally catching up with those who had tormented my father and me for years. Later that day, I consulted with a lawyer who had handled my father's will and asked him to accompany me to my parents' house. When I presented the real will to my mother and sister, their usual calm demeanor turned to shock and disbelief as they read the document over and over. "This is a lie," my mother protested. "I have a will here that states Kim and I are the sole heirs." "If you claim the other will is a forgery," the lawyer said, "we can conduct a handwriting analysis. If it's proven to be a fake, you could be charged with fraud. Are you prepared to face that?" My mother was left speechless, unable to respond. I also learned a great deal from Dan. He revealed that even after his health declined, my mother and sister had abandoned him, sold all his possessions without permission, and acted as they pleased. Kim, on the other hand, had been indulging in reckless behavior, gambling and spending excessively from his personal bank account, leaving him deeply in debt. Due to these malicious actions, both of them were stripped of any inheritance rights. The lawyer made it clear that if my mother and sister continued to unjustly interfere with my inheritance, we would file a lawsuit against them. As the lawyer finished speaking, my mother and sister were left in a state of utter despair. I decided it was time to collect my father's hidden bank book and leave my parents' house for good. With that, I finally felt completely free from the burdens of my family. Soon after, Simon, unaware of the truth, apparently approached my sister, hoping to start a relationship with her. My mother and sister, keeping the inheritance issue a secret, married him quickly. Their aim was to secure a steady source of income and make him their personal ATM. Simon, deceived and eager to enjoy his newfound wealth, bought several luxury cars and quit his job, relying on what he thought was their inheritance. Eventually, Simon noticed something was off and reached out to me in a panic. "Jane, I was wrong. You're all I have. I want to start over." I replied simply, "I don't need you anymore. Besides, you have Kim now. You should take care of your wife properly," and gently ended the call. Moments before Simon called, I had received a call from Kim. "You've ruined my life." Simon quit his job and splurged like a fool as soon as we got married. "I can't believe a man who only cares about money is now my husband. My family name is tarnished because of him. What are you going to do about it?" I responded calmly, "Kim, you're just as interested in money as Simon is. You two are a perfect match. Besides, I heard you and Simon were getting along well while we were still married. Be happy your love came true. I'll be filing a claim for compensation for the affair, though. From now on, let's only communicate through our lawyers. I never want to hear from you again." "Hey, I'm your sister. Aren't you going to treat me like family?" Kim protested. I laughed at her words. "You're the one who never treated me like family." With that, I hung up, blocked her number, and never heard from her again. I was finally free. I used my father's inheritance to build a new house and settled into it. I found a fulfilling job as an office clerk and embraced a busy but satisfying life on my own. Occasionally, I felt a pang of loneliness, but I knew my father was watching over me. As I looked at his picture on my wall, I felt his gentle smile and knew he was proud. I grew up in a loving and ordinary family, surrounded by good friends. In terms of looks, academics, and sports, I was just average, but I always felt incredibly fortunate to have such good people around me. Perhaps that's why I tend to trust people too much. Because of this, I've often been called naive or even mystical by some. This story is about my pathetic mother-in-law who took advantage of my trusting nature. My name is Mary. I'm 31 years old and I work as a salesperson. My husband Jake and I got married just a year ago, so I still feel like a newlywed. I used to say, let's have a baby. But honestly, I was still enjoying our newlywed life. Jake's parents are still together and live about 20 minutes away from our apartment. His mom, Diane, often invites us over for dinner, and we enjoy a family meal at their house about once a month. Some of my friends have worried, saying, "Isn't it too much to visit your in-laws that often?" But Tom, Jake's dad, is great to talk to, and Diane is sweet, so I've never found it bothersome. Besides, Diane seems to prefer working alone in the kitchen, so I'm always treated like a guest. I used to happily join Jake and Tom in chatting until dinner was served, making it easier than preparing a meal at home. However, there was one thing that concerned me. One evening, we were at the in-laws' house for another family dinner. When I tasted the chicken soup Diane made, I couldn't help but grimace internally. "What's wrong, Mary?" Jake asked, noticing my hesitation. "Oh, nothing," I replied, forcing a smile. "I've just never had celery and chicken soup at my parents' place before. It's interesting and delicious, Diane." "Thank you. There's plenty more if you'd like," Diane responded, looking pleased. I struggled to keep smiling. Another bowl of that soup would surely send my blood pressure through the roof. It was incredibly salty. I glanced at Jake and Tom, but they seemed to be enjoying it just fine. I realized that this intense flavor was normal home cooking for them. That night, like many before, I forced myself to finish the soup, despite the overwhelming sodium content. Apparently, my in-laws have a preference for extremely strong flavors. Diane's cooking could be as salty as seawater or as sweet as condensed milk. The first time I tasted it, I nearly spit it out, but the rest of the family ate it like any other meal. I was astonished by their taste preferences. I felt bad leaving food uneaten, so I usually ate everything, but it often upset my stomach. The health impact of eating such intensely flavored food regularly became a major concern for me. I consulted with a nutritionist friend and even started collecting recipes and pamphlets, but there was no way a new daughter-in-law could say, "Your cooking is too rich in flavor. Please modify your recipes." At home, I cooked with normal seasonings, exactly as the recipes instructed, and thought the food tasted good. I often asked Jake, "Is it good?" And he always replied sweetly, "Whatever you cook is delicious." But considering the rich food he grew up with, I couldn't fully believe he was being honest. Regardless, I prioritized our health and continued to cook with moderate seasonings. There was one more thing that worried me. Diane sometimes served less than fresh food. The rolls of bread on my plate were often dry and hard, and occasionally, the fruit served for dessert was partially rotten. I discreetly removed the bad parts, but it was another source of concern. I couldn't bring myself to eat, but I was increasingly worried that my in-laws might end up with food poisoning sooner or later. "Cookies for a snack, Mary," Diane offered. To my horror, I realized the cookies she handed me had expired 6 months ago. Jake noticed too, and quickly spoke up, "Mom, these cookies are expired." Diane looked startled and then laughed it off, saying, "Oh no, I'm so careless." I felt relieved that she didn't seem too concerned, but my relief turned to alarm when I found the same box of expired cookies mixed into the snack bag she gave me on our next visit. I had seen this kind of behavior before, the time my grandma started showing signs of dementia. Could it be happening to Diane too? She was only in her 50s, but I began to doubt whether her forgetfulness was just carelessness or something more serious. I wanted to talk to Jake about Diane's overly seasoned food and the possibility that she might be showing early signs of dementia, but I was afraid it would be too much for him to handle. Then one day, a small miracle happened. We found out I was pregnant. "I'm finally going to be a dad. Do you think it's a boy or a girl?" Jake asked excitedly, stroking my belly every day. "When should we tell our parents? Should we wait until the end of the first trimester?" he continued. "Well, the doctor just confirmed the heartbeat, but I want them to know in case something happens. We'll tell them after the 12-week checkup." I replied, "I guess we just have to wait and see. I can't wait to tell everyone." "I think my mom's going to cry when she hears the news," Jake said, his excitement infectious. "You're right," I agreed, imagining Diane's tears of joy when she found out. It filled me with warmth and happiness. I was so thrilled about the pregnancy that I pushed my concerns aside. But the following weekend, when I saw Diane's chicken soup on the table, it hit me that there was a serious problem. If I ate her overly seasoned food, it might affect my baby. The pregnancy books I'd been reading warned that high blood pressure and diabetes could impact the health of both the mother and the baby. And what about stale bread and expired foods? They might not have harmed me before, but they could pose a risk to my unborn child. The thought made me anxious, and I couldn't bring myself to start eating. Oh no, Mary, you haven't eaten at all, Diane remarked, noticing my untouched plate. I hope it wasn't too bad for your taste, Diane said, glancing at my plate and frowning. Oh, no, it's not that, I quickly responded, but before I could explain, Jake jumped in, thinking it was morning sickness. She's just tired and doesn't have much of an appetite, he said, trying to save me. I see. Are you working too hard, Mary? Don't push yourself too much, Tom said kindly, while Diane's expression remained grim. Thank you, I replied, feeling guilty for leaving the food and lying to them. After everyone else finished their meal, Diane brought me a large brownie topped with ice cream and a cup of tea. Have some sweets at least. I'm sure it'll help you relax, she said, smiling. Thank you so much. What a thoughtful gesture, I said, deciding to at least take a bite. But recently, sweets had been giving me heartburn. I noticed Jake had a smaller piece without ice cream. I whispered to Jake so Diane wouldn't hear from the kitchen. Jake, can I switch with yours? Ha! Oh, sure, he replied, handing me his plate. I cut a small piece of the brownie. It was moist and soft, and I washed it down with tea. But as Jake cut into his piece, he frowned. This brownie is a little hard, he remarked. Just as he was about to take a bite, Diane suddenly burst out of the kitchen, shouting, No, 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 no. My heart jumped at her outburst. Jake looked equally puzzled as Diane snatched the brownie from his hand. Why are you eating Mary's brownie? I gave it to her, she exclaimed, clearly upset. Does it really matter who eats it? Jake asked, confused. Yes, it does. This one is outdated, Diane revealed, leaving us all in stunned silence. Her unexpected revelation hung in the air, leaving us both shocked and confused. I didn't notice the brownie was old because the ice cream was melting on top, I said, hoping to diffuse the tension. But my words only seemed to confirm Diane's intent. Jake turned to his mother, his voice calm but filled with a quiet fury that made the moment even more chilling. So you tried to hide the staleness by adding ice cream, didn't you, Mom? Diane's face went pale as she realized the severity of the situation. She scrambled to defend herself. No, that's not it. It's old, but it's still good, so I wanted Mary to have it. Jake wasn't convinced. Then why did you stop me so forcefully from eating it? You gave it to Mary knowing it wasn't safe. No way, Diane stammered, her voice trembling. Suddenly, it all clicked and a shiver ran down my spine as I pieced everything together. You've been feeding me stale food and giving me expired snacks on purpose, haven't you? What? Tom, who had been silent until now, glared at Diane with an intensity that sent chills through the room. What's going on, honey? Diane, visibly shaken, tried to explain herself. It wasn't on purpose. I just had some leftovers, and I didn't want to waste them, so I gave them to Mary. That's what you call on purpose, Jake shot back, his voice cold. I can't think of any good reason to make someone else eat food you don't want. But she's not really our family, Diane muttered, her voice barely audible. She's an outsider, so why not give her the old food? Jake's eyes narrowed. You became part of my family too, but you were never treated like that. No, but... Diane's voice faltered as she banged on the table in a panic, her composure unraveling. As I watched her, my heart sank. The Diane I thought I knew was nowhere to be found. I had loved Diane so much, but now I was deeply disappointed. I wondered if everything I believed about her kindness was just an illusion. The more I thought about her betrayal, the more disgusted I felt. She now seemed like a distressed demon, scrambling to make excuses. But there was something else gnawing at me. Was it really harmless? Could it be that the intense flavors in your food were intentional too? What? What are you talking about? Tom and Jake looked at her in disbelief. Diane's expression faltered, revealing a hint of guilt. Jake grabbed my bowl of chicken soup despite Diane's desperate attempt to stop him. Don't, Jake. Ignoring her, he took a spoonful and immediately spat it out. This tastes like seawater. Tom, now suspicious, tried a spoonful from the untouched side of the bowl and scolded, Mary, have you always been eating this kind of food? Yes, I replied, feeling a wave of realization wash over me. I thought this was just how things were here, especially since you and Jake seemed to eat it without issue. That's because ours was normal, Jake said quietly, the weight of the situation sinking in. I see, so that's how it was. Seeing my realization, Jake's shoulders slumped as if the strength had been drained from him. How could you not notice? Was it more than just bad flavor? She's even been giving you expired snacks, Tom added, his anger evident. I thought she might have dementia. I confess, my voice trembling. Diane's mouth twitched in response. For a daughter-in-law she despised to the point of malice, to think she had dementia, a condition she found humiliating, was a deep insult to her. How pathetic, Jake said, his voice gentle as he turned to me. You're so sweet, putting up with all of this because you thought she was sick. He then turned to Diane, his tone growing cold. But you, Mom, I can't believe you've been bullying such a good person who trusted you so much. Tom and Jake's disappointment hung heavily in the air, making the tension unbearable. Diane, once a figure I admired, now seemed like a stranger, her true nature finally revealed. I never imagined Diane could be this kind of person. That's why I consulted so many people, saying things like, Diane's taste buds seem off, and I'm worried about her health. She's still in her 50s, but she's showing signs of dementia. Dementia. Diane's expression quickly changed, a flicker of panic crossing her face as she realized her actions hadn't gone unnoticed. Yes, I talked to many people, my parents, friends, even some colleagues at work. I continued, pulling out a stack of pamphlets from my bag. They were all so helpful, giving me tips and resources. Here, take a look. I handed the pamphlets over, piling them on the table. I had been carrying them around, intending to discuss this with Tom and Jake someday. I never expected they'd come in handy in this way. Wow, you were really worried about her, Tom said, unfolding a pamphlet as if touched by my concern. But Diane was furious. You're terrible. I'm not sick, she shouted. No, it's you who are terrible, Jake snapped back. Unlike you, she has a pure heart. She was sincerely concerned about you. Shut up, Diane screamed, her voice shaking with rage. I never liked her from the beginning. She pointed at me, her eyes burning with anger. You, with your dumb face, took my beloved son away from me. He didn't even notice the harassment. Are you serious? You're an idiot if you can't see what an amazing woman Jake married, Tom shot back. You were fooled by your own jealousy. What? Diane was taken aback, her fury momentarily halted. In front of me, my in-laws were locked in a fierce argument. It was shocking and painful to see someone I once trusted turn against me so viciously. As I lay in bed that night, Jake whispered to me, Why didn't you tell me before we got married? If I had known. Diane, overhearing, looked momentarily hopeful, as if hoping for some redemption, but Jake's disappointment was clear. The rift between us all had deepened, and there was no going back. I knew it. Jake was on my side. If I had known earlier, he said quietly, I would have cut ties. Ignoring Diane's despair, Jake held me tightly. I'm sorry, Mary. I didn't realize how much you were going through. I'm sorry too, I replied, for not recognizing her true intentions sooner. Diane's eyes twitched, clearly shocked to hear such words from someone she had always looked down on. I married you because you were pure and kind, Jake continued. Don't worry, we'll never come here again. Wait, Diane pleaded, her voice desperate. You can't do this. I'm your mother. You were a terrible mother, Jake said firmly. I'll never let you see your grandchild. A grandchild? Diane's eyes widened as she finally noticed my belly. If only she had realized earlier, before her schemes consumed her, things might have turned out differently. Let's go, Mary, Jake said, extending his hand. I took it and slowly stood up. Wait, I'm sorry. Diane cried out, rushing to grab Jake's arm. It was just a small mistake. But Jake dismissed her, turning to me. I'm not the one you should be apologizing to. Diane glanced at me, her eyes full of disgust. I couldn't bring myself to forgive someone who had harbored such malice against me. Before she could say another word, I spoke up. I trusted you completely, and you betrayed that trust. I can never trust you again, not for the rest of my life. I won't allow someone like you near my precious child. Goodbye. No? Diane collapsed in anguish as we walked away without looking back. Tom, watching us leave, seemed to understand that we would never return. It's strange to think about it now, but if only Diane had cherished our relationship, she could have lived a happy life as a grandmother surrounded by her grandchildren. What a tragic mistake she made. When I finally told my parents and friends who had supported me, they all seemed relieved. You finally realized, they said, some stunned, others nodding knowingly. Apparently, everyone but me had been aware that I was being mistreated. but they hadn't said anything because they knew how genuinely concerned I was about Diane. At least they had listened to me, collecting pamphlets and offering advice, waiting for the day to see the truth for myself. When that day finally came, I felt a wave of shame and embarrassment. My face burned with it. But thanks to the mountain of material everyone had given me, I was able to prove that my concern had been genuine. Because of their help, Jake and Tom were completely on my side. I realized then just how blessed I was by the people around me. Now, 2 years later, my life has taken a different turn. I've been busy taking care of my little son, who is celebrating his first birthday today. I'm hard at work preparing a birthday cake, fried chicken, and other dishes I'm not accustomed to making. Jake has been a great dad, playing with our son and changing his diaper. In the midst of this, I get a call from Tom. He was invited to the birthday party, so I pick up the phone without hesitation, assuming he might need to ask me something. "Hello, Mary," says the voice on the other end, sweet and probing. It's not Tom. Even after 2 years, I recognize Diane's voice instantly. After we cut ties, we moved to a new place far away from her and only told Tom. I blocked Diane's number and had mine erased from her phone. Thanks to Jake and Tom acting as shields, I didn't have to endure an unwelcome visit at the hospital when I gave birth. I've been able to live a peaceful life, and now she wants to ruin it. Just hearing her voice sends a shiver down my spine. "Where's Tom?" I ask. "He's in the bathroom right now," she replies. "Isn't it my grandson's birthday today?" I don't think Tom told her, but she might have noticed him discreetly preparing a gift. Jake senses something's wrong from my tone and gestures to take over the phone, worry etched on his face. But I give him a thumbs up, indicating I've got this. I continue the call, knowing that the innocent, naive wife I once was is a thing of the past. "Listen, Mary," Diane begins. I genuinely feel terrible about what happened. Diane's voice trembled with regret. "I was wrong to do such mean things, and I regret it deeply." "Ha!" I replied, uncertain of her sudden change of heart. "I want to see my grandson soon. I'll buy him lots of cute clothes and toys." Diane continued, her voice trying to sound hopeful. "Okay, but I don't need you to hide needles in the toys or anything like that," I said firmly. "No, I wouldn't do something so horrible," Diane protested. "I mean, you think I'd do that after all those accusations?" "You fit me all those disgusting things," I countered. It wasn't just a little too much salt or sugar. It was unhealthy and potentially dangerous. "But I really regret it," she insisted. "You're kind enough to understand that, right?" "I'm often told I'm kind," I said, "but it's not just kindness. I'm just too trusting. Once someone betrays that trust, it's gone forever." "So you'll never regain my trust," I told her firmly, "and I won't forgive you. I'll never let you see my precious son." "Wait, Mary." Diane's voice cut off as I ended the call. I could hear Tom and Diane yelling at each other on the other end. I hung up, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. "Sorry for that," I said quietly to Jake. "You're getting stronger, Mary," Jake said, his voice filled with pride as he placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. Of course, I am his mother. My son looked content lying in his crib, and when he saw me, he flapped his little hands happily. I picked him up, rubbing my cheek against his soft, tiny body, which still carried a faint scent of milk. His eyes reflected pure joy as he looked at me, filling me with a wave of protective, maternal love. I've outgrown the gentle, naive wife I once was. Now, I'm determined to be strong and vigilant to protect my family. "Oh, it smells so good," I said, noticing the birthday cake was almost ready. My son's happy coos made us both smile broadly. In the past, I was carefree and blissfully unaware of others' malice, but that was because of the people who shielded me. Now, it's my turn to protect my family. I'm resolved to be strong so that these happy days can continue for a long time.
Hi there, I'm Tara, and I've come to share a story that's still fresh in my mind from a few months back. I want to shed light on toxic behavior and the importance of standing up against it. At 32 years old, I live with my husband Stephen, who's also 32, and our kitten. Stephen and I have been together since high school, and despite attending colleges in different states, our bond remains strong. We're about to celebrate our 15th anniversary as a couple, but unfortunately, my mother-in-law Lily won't be joining us. Lily has never approved of me. She's always favored her two sons, Stephen and his older brother Sean, showering them with attention since birth. They adored her so much that they failed to recognize her controlling and manipulative nature as they grew older. Lily's stringent rules became suffocating for her teenage sons. They weren't allowed to date, socialize, or even have sleepovers. Cian rebelled against her restrictions, often getting into trouble. Despite his defiance, he stood up for his now-wife Jessie when Lily attempted to intimidate her. As Stephen and Cian distanced themselves from Lily upon turning 18, her focus shifted to me. She went to great lengths to sabotage our relationship, even planning a trip to Hawaii during prom week to keep us apart. Although Stephen pleaded with her to cancel the trip, he rarely challenged her authority. During our college acceptances, Stephen and I briefly separated, during which Lily celebrated and encouraged Stephen to move on. Despite her efforts, Stephen eventually reunited with me, much to Lily's dismay. She resorted to harassing and humiliating me at every opportunity. Lily's behavior serves as a reminder of the importance of recognizing and combating toxicity in relationships. It's crucial to stand up against such behavior to protect oneself and those we care about. I attempted to have a conversation with Stephen about Lily's behavior, but it didn't go as planned. Stephen, your mother's treatment of me is very disrespectful. I've always tried to be friendly and welcoming towards her, but all she does is berate me and call me names. I'm getting tired of her behavior. You need to do something about it, I expressed. Tara, you know my mother's a little sensitive with what happened with Cian. She's afraid to lose me as well. She only means well for me and my future. You shouldn't take her words to heart, Stephen replied. So you're okay with how Lily treats me? Seriously, Steve, you remember she tried to break us up, right? I questioned. She only did that because she thought you would cheat. If you had cheated on me, I would have been heartbroken. She wanted to help me escape a bad heartbreak, Stephen justified. Are you serious? She played on your insecurities to end our relationship. How can you justify that? I retorted. No matter what I said, Stephen never agreed with my perspective. He always thought I was overreacting and that Lily was only looking out for him. He outright refused to believe me when I said that Lily called me to berate me. He always said that Lily could do no such thing and that I was falsely accusing her of being mean. Even Cian tried to talk some sense into him, but after knowing everything, Stephen fought with Cian and accused him of betraying their mom. Things became strained between Cian and Stephen. Cian ended up marrying Jessica, his high school girlfriend whom Lily had tried to scare off. He invited Cian and me to the wedding but refused to even tell Lily about it. Lily was in hysterics and tried to convince Stephen to talk to Cian and get herself invited. Stephen, being the mama's boy he is, argued with Cian about Lily. Stephen almost didn't go to the wedding to support Lily. However, I asked him, do you really want to boycott the wedding to support Lily? Considering what she did to Cian and Jessie in high school, she still complains about Jessie and insists that she took Cian away from her. Why should they invite her to their wedding? Music. He responded, look, you didn't know the whole story. It was a big misunderstanding. She was trying to do what she thought was best for Cian. Moms can get carried away sometimes, but she's ready to mend bridges. We're family, and we shouldn't hold grudges against each other. I countered, it's their wedding, and they can choose who to invite. It's not your place to make those requests. We need to respect their decision. I know I can't do much, which is why I'm not attending the wedding. I want them to know that they are making a mistake. I'm going to RSVP tomorrow, and they will have plenty of time to change their minds. I warned him, Stephen, if you don't go to their wedding, they might cut you out as well. They've already done that to Lily. Are you sure you want to lose your brother over this issue? After a lot of back and forth, he finally agreed to attend the wedding. I was happy, thinking things might start to change. He witnessed how happy Cian and Jessie were without Lily's interference. They moved far away and organized the wedding to prevent Lily from showing up. Lily went ballistic when Stephen showed her the pictures, crying on his shoulders and making him stay with her for a month. Stephen even canceled our Colorado trip to make it up to her. I was heartbroken by how he handled the situation. However, I knew that we loved each other deeply, and breaking up wasn't an option anymore. All I hoped for was that Stephen would see the light and come to his senses about Lily's horrific behavior. Fast forward to 2 years ago, Stephen finally proposed to me, and I said yes. Lily was upset but put on a happy face for him. Later, I discovered that Lily refused to give Stephen her engagement ring because she was convinced I was a gold digger and that our marriage wouldn't last. I must admit, I adore the ring Stephen picked out for me. As engineers, we both earn well, and he was more than capable of buying the ring himself. Plus, I'd much rather wear something he chose than any of Lily's jewelry. Wedding planning turned into a disaster. Lily inserted herself everywhere she could, from cake tasting to venue searching. She detested my ideas and even attempted to change the theme. She called my vintage theme boring and tacky, and though I tried to ignore her, my then fiancé Stephen took her criticisms to heart. Stephen and I meticulously considered every decision we made. I finally had to put my foot down and talk to him about it. This is getting ridiculous. We're the ones getting married. Your mom needs to give us space to decide on our own. I don't need her input on everything. She dislikes everything I choose. You need to tell her to back off. I insisted. Tara, Mom just wants the best for us. She's been to more weddings than us, and I'm sure her input will be valuable to us in the future. You know she couldn't attend Cian's wedding. She just wants to enjoy mine, Stephen reasoned. I'm tired of hearing that excuse. She deserved to be uninvited from Cian's wedding. That was all her fault just because Jesse didn't allow her to interfere. I will not include her in everything. She's welcome to come along, but saying mean things about my choices is unacceptable. This is our wedding, Stephen. She already had hers, I argued. After much coaxing and begging, Stephen finally decided to tell Lily to back off. She threw a fit but toned it down a little. Sadly, Stephen prioritized her choices and changed many things. Initially, I felt pretty sad, but I also knew it was Stephen's day, so I went along in a few places to avoid more trouble. I hadn't yet developed a strong backbone, and Stephen was too engulfed in the fog to think clearly. The wedding turned into another disaster when Lily showed up in a white dress that was so sparkly and lacy, everyone could see it was a bridal gown. Thankfully, Stephen realized the problem with her dress and insisted she change before the ceremony. She tried to play dumb and claimed she didn't have another dress. At that point, my maid of honor and best friend produced a pale blue gown that fit Lily perfectly. Knowing she was planning to wear white, I went shopping and bought her a decent dress out of my own pocket. Lily was out of excuses and had to wear the dress. During the reception, she made tearful speeches about losing her babies to awful women, targeting both me and Jess because they were avoiding her. Lily also disparaged our relationship and tried to portray herself as the poor mother-in-law. The wedding guests looked awkward, and even her family was mortified. My maid of honor promptly took the microphone away and started to lighten the mood. During our honeymoon, Lily called us continuously, crying about feeling lonely. At one point, she was calling us 6 times a day. When she couldn't reach Stephen, she called me, accusing me of keeping him away from her. She insisted that no matter what I did, Stephen would always choose her over me. I reminded her that we were on our honeymoon and that she needed to stop calling us so frequently. When Stephen's phone died, he went back to our room to charge it. There was no reason for me to keep him away from her. I know how greedy you are, Tara. All you want is his money. You cannot accept it. He sends me money every month and brings me gifts. You want to isolate him so that you can take all this money. I won't let that happen. He has been taking care of me since his father died 10 years ago, Lily accused. Lily, I don't care if he looks after you. You are his mother, so it's natural he will send you money. I earn pretty well for both of us, so I don't want his money anyways. You need to stop accusing me of such things, I responded firmly. Shut up, girl. You can fool him, but I know what type of woman you are. Now hand over the phone to my baby immediately. I need to talk to him right now, Lily demanded. This was just one of the many conversations I had with her throughout the honeymoon. We returned home and had to deal with her crying for days because we didn't take her on our honeymoon. Imagine my surprise when she scolded my husband for going without her. Anyway, as usual, Stephen did everything to console his mother and ignore my problems. I was slowly learning to put up with her tantrums and speak out for myself. Everything was going more or less okay until a few months ago when I found out that I was pregnant with our first child. We were both ecstatic, and Steve wanted to tell Lily immediately. I was a little uneasy about it, but decided to let it go. I was sure she would be happy for her first grandbaby. Boy, was I wrong. The moment she knew, the waterworks and screaming started. She said I was baby trapping him and taking him away from her. It was all part of my grand scheme. She's sure I cheated on Stephen and was passing off the baby as his. My husband did his best to calm her down, but she refused to listen to him. By this point, I grew increasingly weary of Lily's antics. Her tantrums persisted for 2 weeks before she decided to pay us a visit. She arrived early in the morning and let herself in with a spare key. Lily seemed overly joyous about our baby and even attempted to shower me with gifts. Stephen was elated, believing Lily had finally accepted the baby. However, the reality was far from that. I felt uneasy about her newfound happiness and opted to remain cautious. Later that evening, Lily offered to make us some tea, claiming it would help warm me up since it was getting chilly outside. Stephen was sincerely grateful for her kindness, giving me an "I told you so" look. Deciding to investigate, I excused myself and went to check on Lily in the kitchen. I observed her making tea and adding something from a carton. Both my husband and I are lactose intolerant, so we only use a specific brand of oat milk for our tea. The carton Lily used was not the one we normally use. While she used the oat milk for 1 cup, she poured from the suspicious carton into the other. Initially, I brushed it off, assuming she was simply using another type of vegan milk for variety. However, I remained uneasy when she placed the suspicious mug in front of me. In an impulsive move, I discreetly switched my husband's cup with mine when they weren't looking. We drank our tea, and the entire time, Lily smirked at me from across the couch. Thankfully, nothing happened for the rest of the night. However, in the early hours of dawn, I heard my husband throwing up in the bathroom. He made several trips, and the noise woke me up. After a while, I saw him lying on the couch in the living room, clearly in pain. When I approached him, Lily emerged from her room, looking concerned. Upon seeing Stephen's distress, she began to ugly cry. It was then that I realized she had used cow milk in our tea. I was seething with anger, but first, I had to get Stephen to the hospital. I called 911 and requested an ambulance because Stephen was experiencing intense stomach pain and was on the verge of passing out. At the hospital, we waited for the medication to take effect. When the doctor arrived for a consultation, I took Lily with me and made her confess in front of Stephen and the doctor. She was worried about her son, so making her confess wasn't difficult. The doctor shook his head and informed us that Stephen needed to be hospitalized for a day. After the doctors left, Stephen looked troubled. Suddenly, the fog started to clear in his head, and he was baffled by what Lily had done. He asked her, "Mom, you know I'm allergic to milk. Why did you use it? We don't even keep cow milk in our fridge. Why did you bring it to our house? Even Tara doesn't drink cow milk, and you are well aware of that." Lily responded tearfully, "Stephen, trust me, I didn't want to hurt you. I don't know how this happened. Of course, I know my baby can't have milk. I am your mother." Stephen pressed further, "Then why did you add milk to my tea, Mom? What happened?" Lily continued sobbing in a corner, prompting me to reveal the truth. "I know why Lily brought cow milk into our home. You weren't supposed to drink it. It was meant for me." Stephen was shocked. "You can't drink cow milk either. I'm sure Mom knows that as well. Why would she bring cow milk for you? I don't understand." I explained, "Lily just wanted to hurt me and our baby. I don't know what she wanted to achieve, but she wanted me to suffer. She gave me the cup you drank from. I switched our cups when she wasn't looking because I didn't want to risk the health of our child." Turns out I was right. Stephen was devastated and apologized profusely to me. He vowed to keep Lily away from our lives. I comforted him as best as I could and took him home the next day. I also changed the locks on our house while Stephen was in the hospital. He called Lily and informed her that we were going no contact with her for good, despite her protests and pleas. Stephen firmly stated, "Mom, after what you've done, there's no way I want you around. I always stood up for you and defended you. I was too blind to see how much you were hurting my family. I won't allow this anymore. You have crossed the line. Stephen, please, I didn't mean for this to happen. She was taking all your time, and I was feeling lonely. I thought that the baby would make things worse. I simply wanted to hurt her a little and make her suffer. I'm sorry, Lily pleaded. There is no point in saying sorry now. You have done something unforgivable. I cannot even imagine what would have happened if Tara had drunk the tea you gave her. I am disgusted with you and don't want to hear your voice again. Leave us alone, Stephen asserted firmly. With that, we slowly started going no contact with her. She showed up at the house and tried to get in with her keys. When she saw that we changed the lock, she started banging on the door. We simply called the cops and let them deal with her. We also blocked her on all our phones and social media. Cian and Jesse contacted our extended family to inform them about the issue. Everyone was downright disgusted and appalled by her behavior. After discussing her actions with me, Stephen, Cian, and Jesse, we decided to put a restraining order on her. With all the evidence caught on our security camera and her confession to the doctor, the order was granted pretty soon. So far, she has stayed away but has tried to fish for information from our extended family. No one has agreed to entertain her demands. We have also cut off our financial support, so she had to take up a job at Walmart to get by. We are slowly rebuilding our relationship with Cian and Jesse. Stephen and Cian had a heart-to-heart conversation and solved their problems. Jess and I were always good friends, so this just made us even happier. Thankfully, my husband has finally come to his senses and protected me from Lily. We are now pretty happy and eagerly waiting for the birth of our child. To be on the safe side, I reminded my husband that I won't allow Lily to ever have a relationship with our child. To my surprise, he agreed to this condition immediately. We've been enjoying the peace in our household after Lily is gone for good. We might just move to Cian City after our child is born. I am not sure what the future will bring, but I am positive we will get through everything together.